Hello, Internet! Gino, that Pinguino Grieco here again with another episode of Deep Listens. We are back in the Decagon. We are back in the Final Fantasy X discussion. And that means I am joined, as always, by Chris, Zombiepie Redacted.
Oh, God. Drink it up. I got 3 shots of vodka. Gonna do it straight right before we record this podcast proper. Give me...
This is our final Final Fantasy X episode.
Ugh.
That's the sound of someone who has seen what happens at the end of Final Fantasy X. Woo.
You know how whenever I say it can't get any worse or crazy, and you always respond with, you don't even know.
Yep. You're wrong.
Other than Final Fantasy VIII, I think this is the game that I deeply regret underestimating its insanity.
Yeah, 8, you can never be prepared.
You're
you
never
always
prepared.
think they ran out. You always think, hey, we went to space or something. It can't get weirder than this.
No,
And then
there's
it's like,
no way.
Nope.
But then 10, you think you figure out 10. You think you've got it all planned out. You think that the world is what it is, and it can't get any crazier than what you see. And boy, does it get stupid.
Yeah, I feel like 10 is one of the emblems of a game. It has every marking of a JRPG, and it uses the Chekhov's gun, the Chekhov's plot hole, I should call it, that many JRPGs love to use, that there is some tiny little thing that happens at the beginning of the game to kick off the overall story, but it's kind of a gaping plot hole, and you don't really notice it because it's the impetus for the story. And then they always go like, hey, remember that thing that happened at the beginning that was kind of weird? Turns out it was the crux of everything.
Oh, no.
And in this game, it's like, yeah, I guess it is kind of weird that...
You say it's like a checklist? I feel like...
No, Chekhov's gun.
No, okay, so I'll go with my metaphor. It's a checklist of, clearly this was designed by a team that was brand spanking new to the Final Fantasy franchise and had new creative directors, and they're like, our game doesn't have a bullshit Final Fantasy plot twist at the end. Guess it's time to do that. Check. Oh, hey, there's this completely frivolous final boss battle at the end. Check. Hey, we're going to give you a bunch of weird stuff at the end that's totally broken. Check. Hey, every Final Fantasy game has to have a super boss. Let's put 10. Check, check, check.
Yep.
You like chocobos? Check. It's very painfully obvious, and maybe you can fill this gap in for me, that Final Fantasy X was made by people who respected and loved Final Fantasy, but had never been given the opportunity to be the directors of a Final Fantasy game proper.
Yeah, and I think that this is the game where they still have retained a lot of the talent from 7, 8, 9, 6, 5, like a lot of the talent from earlier, but people are moving up in the company, and the Gooch,
their
Gooch
ideas,
is gone.
Yeah, the Gooch is gone, and their ideas
are fine
to a certain extent.
But then
we're going to talk more about this in greater detail. But then after 10, and I'm doing this completely based off of my observations, they went in a completely different direction and kind of like disregarded everything that a lot of people love about the Final Fantasy series and franchise.
Yes. So with all that in mind, let's go ahead and start this off with some feedback, because we've got a lot of it.
We have a lot.
We have a lot of feedback. So if you want to get in on the feedback train, go ahead at Deep Listens Pod or at That Pinguino on Twitter, deeplistens.libsyn.com. You can join the discussion on our comment sections, or deeplistenspodcast at gmail.com. First comment or critique comes from Lewis. This question is from Final Fantasy Podcast with a different question addressed to each member. To Chris, what do you think Gino's reaction would be to the last level of Myst 5? I don't mean the last puzzle. I mean that scene at the end.
Yeah.
To Gino, given his history of overreacting to BS plot twists and final bosses, how do you think Chris will react to the last 2 boss battles in Final Fantasy V? I would argue 5 is real dumb in its end, but kind of perfect in a way. So why don't you answer first?
Yeah, that last level in Myst 5 is kind of perfect. I don't think that Myst 5 is that great of a game. It's really interesting to look back on historically because it's the first game that was fully animated rather than live action and real time.
So it's something the worst one?
People hate it for the wrong reasons. People hate it, and I can show you some of those old school forum posts about how it's feminist propaganda.
Oh, great.
Yeah. Oh, man.
I'm sure I would be very open to that argument.
And the antagonist is probably the most interesting antagonist in a Myst game. And I'm probably going to convince you to play at least up to Myst 3, because I think that's other than Myst original, like regular Myst 3 is probably the definitive Myst experience. It's inscrutable with its puzzle design. It's huge. Myst 3 is huge, and they really doubled down in kind of their movie-like qualities. They spent a lot of their budget on the green screen, and it is painfully obvious for 3. But Myst 5, you know how you kind of talk about with the Final Fantasy series about how you wished sometimes stories in game franchises would just end, or they would have a resolute conclusion that puts the closure, gives you a resolute sense of closure?
Yep.
Myst 5 ends the Myst franchise. There is no going backwards or forwards. It definitively ends. And the scene that the person is referencing to, you return to the island. That's all I will say.
Oh, that's cool.
And what you see is probably one of the strongest emotional responses I've ever had out of a video game.
All right, I might play that then. In terms of Final Fantasy V, I think that at this point you've been exposed to some of the most raw, uncut weirdness that Final Fantasy will throw at you. You've played 8. 5's final scenes, in comparison to 8, they don't compare. Like, 5's got some weirdness. It is dumb in a beautiful, beautiful way.
So you would agree with our writer that it's dumb in the best possible way?
Oh, yeah. Oh, totally. You don't know about the villain of 5, I don't think. And he is amazing. His backstory is incredible. Where you fight him is incredible. His multiple forms are incredible. Everything is great about the final boss of Final Fantasy V. And I think you will... You know what? I think you will laugh. I think you will crack up and laugh at the final boss of Final Fantasy V after you curse for a long time because he's going to kick your ass a whole bunch of times. Because Final Fantasies, all of these games up until now have made you soft.
Oh, yeah. That's something that... So... Is this the last Final Fantasy game we're going to play that's breakable?
No, 5 is totally breakable. I beat it by picking jobs out of piñatas. Like, you can totally break 5. It's just not breakable in the same way. 8, 9, 10, those games tend to have like one neat trick, and then when you do it, you just roll the whole game. 5 and earlier games tend to have a bunch of very specific tactics. Actually, no. 9 is similar to 5, I would say, in how you break it. But 5 just, like, it's more punishing than 9 is. Like, there's bosses that just do, hey, level 5 death, everyone's dead. Hey, super attack, everyone's dead. Hey, status effects on everyone. Guess you're dead. And that just doesn't happen in the later games quite so much. So I think you will enjoy the end of 5. So thank you, Lewis, for your feedback. We have our next question from Angel or Angel O.
Isn't this the second time he's sent us an email?
Yes.
Sweet. Repeat emails.
Repeat feedback.
Where's NJ for life?
I don't know. He's remained silent. I don't know if we lost that listener. I hope not.
I think we may have lost NJ for life.
I mean, I did make a thumbnail for one of our podcasts that was deliberately making fun of the New Jersey Nets, but that's fine. Angel or Angel says, Wait, let me get this straight. Did Chris actually argue that Mario Party 4 is better than Final Fantasy 9? He said some dumb things on the podcast before, but this might be the dumbest yet. Please have him explain his insane statement in greater detail.
Okay, first off, I mispronounced it. It's not Mario Party 4. I went back and looked. It's actually Mario Party 3. It's probably the Mario Party game I think is the best in the franchise. Other than maybe 7 or 8, with one of them on the Wii is a really good Wii game because each map is incredibly distinct. One of the maps is straight up Fortune Street, and I quite enjoy that. But no, yeah, Mario Party 3 is the greatest Nintendo 64 game ever created. And I think Mario Party 3, it has a very in-depth story mode. So if you want to play 50 turns by yourself, it's got the means in which to provide a very fun experience of 50 turns by yourself. It has a Battle Royale mode. So you take turns moving around the board by hitting the dice blocks, and it's basically, the same thing. The game's equivalent of rolling the dice, and you can just have a fun time with your friends and family. And then it also has something I wish that future entries in the Mario Party franchise had continued to do. It had a dual mode, which is a distinct two-player only mode, where you're just in a smaller map with kind of little monsters helping you out, and you're playing one other person, either an AI or a friend right next to you. And then plus, you have all these really great mini games in Mario Party 3, and the dual maps are great. It has a lot of multiplayer modes. You have to get the Millennium Star. That story is amazing. And if you can get the Game Guy space, you have to surrender all your coins. And if you win them, you can open up the Shy Guy Game Corner. And that's probably some of the most fun you'll have in Mario Party 3. It has a secret level. It's got a lot of hidden goodies there. And it's an infinite amount of fun because let's say you play 50
infinite
turns
amount of
Mario,
fun?
Let's say you play 50 turns of Mario Party 3. 5 times in a row, okay?
Let's say you did that, okay.
Each time you play 50 turns of Mario Party 3, you're going to have a completely different experience with a different assortment, of mini games, different experiences. You'll get completely different results. It is the best Nintendo 64 game, and now that I have completed Final Fantasy X, I can say that my number 10 spot is still Mario Party 3. Mario Party 3 is more enjoyable. It's objectively a better game than Final Fantasy X and Final Fantasy IX. Because Final Fantasy IX and X, they end. Mario Party, whichever game you play, is infinite. You can play them 100 times and you'll have a completely different experience.
By that standard, tic-tac-toe is infinite.
Yeah, it's not. No, it's not. Because,
by that standard.
Because the outcomes that you roll the dice, you'll roll your first turn will be 1 through 6, and you'll never get the same die rolls.
That's not true.
You could play, Gino.
Statistically, you have a 1 in 6 chance of any.
You don't understand. You don't understand what I'm saying. I feel like I'm speaking logic to you, and you're not getting any of this. You could play a map, okay?
I wish I could.
You could
drop
play
you
a
from
map
this call, but I can't.
In Mario Party 3, and you could play it for 3 hours and not see every mini game. Not see, or not even unlock every minigame. You could play 4 hours straight and not unlock all of the minigames. It could take you weeks to unlock all the minigames.
So what you're saying is, in order to get the full game experience...
See, I'm trying to speak logic to you, and you're trying to just have this emotional response because I have somehow belittled your experience with the Final Fantasy franchise. But here I'm speaking the logic. I'm the one who has the moral high ground right here. Okay?
I'm the sane one. The rest of the world is crazy.
See, people, he's yelling at me, and I'm trying to be the civil one here. Okay? So Mario Party 3, You could play it 100 times and have different results, different experiences, and it's going to take you years before you see every possible thing in one map. There are parts of certain maps that I still have never seen in Mario Party 3 because you have to have like the stars align. Okay,
is that because ultimately at the end of the game it just gives out a bunch of stars?
No. See, again, you're doing exactly what a lot of people who say that Mario Party is just a bullshit simulator. You're grabbing onto the fact that it's the fairest game in video game history.
The fairest game. Is it the fairest game in the way that Rapunzel is the fairest maiden? Is it like that? It's real pretty? Because that's the only definition of fair
I know honestly, the listeners right now, they understand what I'm saying.
That definition of fair makes more sense than the one I think you're invoking.
They understand. Let me tell you why I love Mario Party. Because
I believe it was Snow White, not Rapunzel.
Mario Party is one of the few games that I can play with every possible member of my family, regardless of how old or how young, and we all have an equal chance of winning. Okay? That's a powerful thing. I've tried playing,
When you play Russian roulette with your family, you all have an equal chance of winning.
Now you're trying to associate murder and death with one of the most pleasurable multiplayer experiences in video game history. That's just a red hair. You're playing scare tactics here. This is fake news right now.
You're playing Russian roulette with a loaded gun.
No. You see, again, people...
Because everyone loses.
Listeners, our dear listeners, listen to me, not this fake news artist right here.
I can't let this keep happening. On hell, there you go. You wanted to know,
Mario
now
Party
you know.
3. No. Let me say one more thing.
Fine.
You can play Jackbox, whatever the fuck it's called. You could play You Don't Know Jack. You could play Buzz. And they're all very fast. They require either minutia or video game skills. You could play... You, Gino, Mario Party 3 with your Nan. And your Nan has an equal chance of winning versus you. Regardless of whatever time or place, regardless of what point of the game you're playing. Your 5-year-old cousin versus your grandmom versus your uncle who's kind of tipsy right now because it's New Year's and he went a little too far with the booze today. And you all have an equal opportunity to have a fun time and be victorious if you play Mario Party. And that is amazing. No game is like that. No game is quite like that. No game is like that. Where everyone can win. Everyone has a fun time.
You're hurting me and you're hurting the listeners. Final Fantasy IX is a better game than Mario Party 3. I'm not going to let you talk anymore. I'm going to filibuster. No. I said no. I said good day. On to the next bit of feedback.
I actually have feedback from one of the blogs, but keep going.
We have an email from Kyle.
Yes.
From Vancouver. And he has a long one. I initially wrote this shortly after the second episode of Final Fantasy X aired, but completely forgot to send it, and the topic has mostly been addressed since then, but hey, I figured I'd shoot this email your way anyhow. Zombiepie took issue with the portrayal of Jack's alcoholism and felt like the game was apologizing for it. I don't begrudge his opinion, but just want to add my take as someone who had to suffer through that through a severely alcoholic and abusive parent. Without getting deep into my history, I can say that, much like Titus, I hate the mother I knew. She's gone now, but her specter still lingers around small parts of my life. As such, I relate to Titus whenever he reminisces about the Jecht he knew versus the one everyone else in Spira knew. My extended family on my mom's side lived halfway across the country and have rarely met my mom in person since I was born. So when they talk about my mom, they talk about the nice person she must have been, the nice person that must have existed before she came to the West Coast. Based on how my dad and family friends talk about her, my mom has been exactly the person I live with for at least near the time I was born. Just like Titus, I get rather angry when my relatives try to tell me what a great person she was, because that's just not the person I grew up with. Unlike Jecht, however, my mom never changed once the alcoholism took her. Where Zombiepie and I differ is I don't think people talking about Jecht as a hero is apologizing for his prior behavior. I'm replaying for the podcast, but haven't gotten past where the second episode leaves off in Final Fantasy X yet, so I can't quite remember how Titus ends up feeling about his father. But if my mom recovered and became someone worthy of praise, I would be bittersweetly happy about it. Of course, I would have wondered why I wasn't worth changing for, but it's better than being the legacy of a truly irredeemable person. I don't think the game apologizes for Jecht, rather that it tries to say that no one is completely incapable of turning themselves around. Of course, it's Final Fantasy, so it's not particularly nuanced. Though I don't much care for Final Fantasy X's primary gameplay and some story reasons, I appreciate the effort the developers put into making a broken home backstory for their lead hero that's more involved than my blank was killed or I'm an orphan. Now that I have your attention, this email is a Trojan horse to say that Tetramaster is the best minigame in Final Fantasy. It's the best because it's the only one that's brazen about how bullshit it is. One of the first characters you meet in the game, Alleyway Jack, literally robs you blind. Afterward, he talks about how he's amazing at Tetramaster, teaches your dumbass how to play, and then offers to play you in order to steal all your cards back again before you figure out what the fuck you're doing. And he's Gilgamesh. Gilgamesh was supposed to be an honorable character in the game, and then it shits all over his image to promote its minigame chicanery. Chocobo Raising pretends it's legit, Triple Triad spreads some bullshit rules in secret, Chocobo Hot and Cold is a pixel hunt game, and Blitzball is Blitzball. I own a physical version of Tetramaster that was released in limited quantities in Europe that replicates the RNG of the minigame via dice rolls and a value table. It's garbage, and the card variety isn't what you want, but I will always love Tetramaster. The pain train never stops. Choo-choo, Kyle, Vancouver.
Oh, fuck.
So let's respond to the first part. The second part, fine, Kyle. Well played. Game, respect, game.
Yeah, sure. I mean, we all like to put a little bit of poison in our bodies, and I guess he likes Tetramaster.
Game, respect, game.
I hope all of my comments about Jecht didn't come across as unnecessarily judgmental. I don't want my comments to come across as judgmental, and I don't feel the need to be judgmental against a game that I've very hopefully clearly articulated that I love. I feel many of the emotions the game wants me to feel. Sad, sometimes a bit sick, and aware of how large a place circumstance plays in every life, and encountering the damage that alcoholics do both to their own lives and to those around them is grim. What I always felt like I wanted to say is the writing bears a great burden to make what it is attempting work. And I just was hoping that it would. And now that we're going to basically wrap it up, I think for the most part it does.
Yeah, and that's something that I couldn't articulate. Now, we will discuss this, Kyle, during the episode. Towards the end when Jecht's story is kind of fully unfurled, but I thank you so much for sharing your story.
Yes, thank you so much for sharing your story. I understand it's a very personal experience. It's a very painful experience, and thank you for sharing.
Yep. We will totally cover all of those things.
Yes.
And you said you had feedback as well?
Yes, this came from a user, let me find it real quick, Fezrock, a commenter on my blog series. He wanted to correct both you and I about something that I have definitely repeated both on the blog and on the podcast, and he has caught you saying.
Oh, no.
Minor point that the game completely buries somewhere relatively early on, and I don't remember where, the calm is not 10 years long. It's been 10 years since Braska defeated Sin, and Sin is back already. Calms are not set periods of time, and in fact, they are getting shorter. They have been since the very first one. There's only been five calms since the first. The first lasted 200 years. The third lasted less than 80. entirely unknown how much less. The fourth was an unknown amount of time, but still shorter, and the fifth only lasted a few months. The implication being that Sin is getting better at being recreated or returning to form, and that Yuna's calm, if things went as planned, would be shorter still, or maybe even non-existent. The spiral of spirit is getting closer to the drain, that is, when all life is removed from the planet. Unfortunately, the game never really does anything with that information, sticking it in a dialogue box or dialogue option with a random assortment of NPCs. Peace.
Yeah, and thank you for that clarification. But yeah, the whole premise of the calm, that this is an unsustainable cycle, is one of the major themes of the game, and that even more clearly articulates why it is unsustainable. So thank you for that.
Yes, thank you.
So, where we left off. And if you want to get in touch with the show, go ahead at Deep Listens Pod on Twitter, at ThatPinguino, deeplistens.libsyn.com. You can hit up our comment sections, join the discussion, or deeplistenspodcast@gmail.com. Thank you. And now, without further ado, let's get into the main business. So, when we left off, you were in the Calm Lands.
The biz nasty. Yes, correct.
Did you immediately go to the Chocobo races?
I did indeed go to the Chocobo races and training my Chocobo. I had the pleasure of running into a Marlboro, who then proceeded to wipe my party after 3 or 4 moves, in causing me to restart the game.
That sure is a Final Fantasy experience right there.
Yeah, Marlboros are fucked up. They suck.
Always...
Bad breath is the worst. Fucking just so much of the late game for Final Fantasy X is just complete bullshit. I really liked playing this game for 90%. I feel conflicted to say this, but 90% of Final Fantasy X is a very pleasurable experience in terms of mechanics, in terms of exploring the sphere grid. And then it's all like, nah, son, we're going to put all the hardest boss battles at the very end of the game. Oh, you like status effects? Get ready to customize your equipment 10 or 18 times.
We didn't use them until now, but ha ha ha. Gotcha.
So... the Calm Lands, I'm going to say something that maybe you don't like. I think the Calm Lands aren't as bad as Mount Gagazet, because at least the Calm Lands have a mechanic, which is riding the Chocobo, which allows you to be completely removed from the random encounters in the game. Now, training your Chocobo and doing those races at the temple is bullshit. It's complete and total horseshit.
Yeah, and getting to the Chocobos is what sucks, because this is the largest level in the game.
It's so big.
The encounter rate's pretty high, and so I made a mistake about where the Chocobo trainer lady is, and I got turned around, and so I just ran into battle after battle after battle.
Yeah, and I had the luck of, consulting, getting some people to help me out, bail me out on this. But it's not very clear that there's this lady that has a Chocobo and is willing to give you a Chocobo, and you can train the Chocobo. If you try to go through the Calm Lands on foot, you're going to have a bad time. You're going to have a real miserable time. There are enemies on this level which you have nothing to deal with. Like I said, there are Marlboros who have bad breath, and those can cause all kinds of terrible status effects. And your best 2 strategies for defeating them, including equipping any armor you have with status-repelling abilities, is saving your overdrives, which means you gotta grind, or running away, which sometimes isn't the best strategy because they have initiative.
Yeah.
There's so much... I think it's around this time in which I stopped having fun playing Final Fantasy X.
Same. And the boss... So once you did the Chocobo races, right?
I did exactly what you said. There's a temple. It's called Ranmin, or Rammi. The one with the summoner lady.
Yes.
There are 2 Chocobos there. One is going to try and race you to the bottom. The other, you pilot and try to open up chests. The thing you have to realize is before doing the chocobo races, you have the option of training your chocobo. And this highlights my biggest problem about this minigame, is controlling the chocobo has been deliberately designed to play like horseshit.
I mean, not this. So there are two different chocobo control things. There's the chocobo races that happen on the calm lands where you're training your chocobo, and then there's the chocobo on that temple. The chocobo on the temple does not correspond to the chocobo
Exactly, and that's another problem that I have, is that the chocobo at the temple plays completely different than the chocobo in the calm land, and the chocobo in the high road plays completely different than those other two examples. Yeah. So there's no fucking consistency in how you control these chocobos. I guess there's a leveling up system for the chocobos. It's doing more of the training missions, but those training missions are terrible. They're terrible.
Yeah, and if you wanted to get Titus's legendary weapon, that is how you do it.
All of those chocobo.
They suck.
They suck.
So good thing you didn't do that. The chocobo race, though, it gets you access to, I think, 60 or 30 or 60 doors to tomorrow.
30. And I have a bit of a complaint against you. You said 2. Okay? You said true treasure chests. It was 3.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay?
I thought it was 2.
Nope. It's 3.
Huh.
And I did not know you can't touch those poles in the fucking temple.
No, it's 2. If you hit a pole, that means you need 3. Every time you hit a pole, it subtracts from your chest number.
So I thought that the whole temple was like a slalom, that you had to fucking punch the poles with your fist in order to get points.
No, that's undoing your treasure chest. So you probably got 3 and hit 1 pole.
I hit all the poles. I hit all the poles until I...
You read what to do?
Yeah, until I read what I had to do.
I'm sorry.
Then I got 3. Do you... How far... Have you ever done all 5 chests and then leveled up your chocobo all the way?
No.
It's astounding how much of this game is hidden beneath 50 feet of crap.
Yeah, I wouldn't do that.
Bullshit.
Once you get the 30 doors of tomorrow, you don't need to care about anything ever again.
It's
just kill everything.
It's just, and then there's Belgamine.
Yep.
And I really like what the story does with her. I just don't want to get the fucking Magus sisters. So I was never able to see the conclusion of her story arc.
You sent her.
Yeah, I know. I had to look it up on YouTube. That's a really cool scene. I wish I was able to see that scene. I wish this really interesting dynamic they introduce in the dawn of the game. I wish I had been able to see the conclusion of that story arc without having to do a bunch of garbage.
Yeah, and speaking of a bunch of garbage, some of that garbage is like capturing monsters. There's a monster capturing system in this game.
So here's oh my fucking
it's crazy.
Brain is going to blow up. So I actually tried to do this. I tried to capture the monsters because I was like, you know what? I've always gotten every single summon. I'm going to do this. I'm going to freaking do this. I'm going to get all the monsters. So I won't go to Mount Gagazet. For those that are listening, we're going to go back into our normal chronological order, but it's our first impressions. So there's a dude who has an arena in the Calm Lands, and he's like, you can come here and level up and get cool shit if you can beat all these monsters. It's like, where are all the monsters? Well, they got out. It's like, oh, okay, so this is the contrived capture the monsters, fight the monsters. So I go to Mount Gagazet. I buy all the special weapons, which are not cheap. So this guy needs us to capture all his monsters, and he's charging money for us to use the equipment necessary for him to get his shit back.
It's a real RPG-ass thing to do.
That's, again, super contrived, whatever. It's an RPG. I go to Mount Gagazet. I get every single monster once. It's like, fucking yay. I get to do this. I'm going to do this. I go over there. I check the menu, and it says 0. It's like, what the fuck? I just got all of these monsters for you. I should be good. I check the guide. You have to get each monster 10 times.
Yeah, you do.
You have to get each monster 10 times. And I was just like, fuck.
You're going to kill those same things.
And those monsters are not easy. Some of those monsters are a pain. And if you try to get the underwater monsters, you're stuck using Riku, Waka, and Titus because they're the only characters who can swim.
And if you kill them with anything other than physical attacks, it doesn't count.
Doesn't count. So if you use items, if you use and Riku's isn't a big damage output character with her little whatever the hell her thing is. I think she's kind of a weird combination of
got a glove.
Yuffie from Final Fantasy VII.
Yuffie throws ninja stars. Riku's got like knucks, like bronze knucks.
It's just a continual reminder of how it's like, oh, yeah, so that's a normal Final Fantasy side quest. We're going to take it to 11. Dodging lightning? Normal Final Fantasy games would ask you to do it 20 times in a row. We're going to do 2,000. 200, actually.
200.
Oh, you need to capture monsters? Most Final Fantasy games would just have you catch it once. We're going to have you catch them 10 times and have the random encounters not coincide to your progress, so you're just going to be stuck there for 4 hours.
Yeah, there's a lot of time sucks in this game if you want. Luckily, none of them are essential to progressing.
So you go to the Calmlands. Yuffie and your party, you have been deemed infidels or traitors to
Yevon.
To Yevon. And there's a guy who comes up to you and says, hey, what's his name? It's the former summoner of the first summoner for Waka. What's his name?
It begins with a Z.
It's not Zan. Zook.
It's not Zook.
And what I like about that quick scene, and then there's another temple that I want to talk about on the Calmlands, is how in between Lord Braska and Yuna, there have been a lot of people who have attempted to bring the calm and failed. And I quite enjoy the fact that the game provides all these multiple, reminders that this entire community of summoners is quite invested in bringing forth the calm, but everyone has failed. So Zook failed. There's the person in the secret temple in the bottom of the Calmlands. She failed. There are a bunch of times when Waka's like, yeah, I remember when I was a part of their mission to bring forth the calm, but they gave up or they died. It's like, wow, yeah, this really is hitting home the fact that these people are desperate to stop the pain and suffering. And I thought that was one of the few elements of the story that Final Fantasy X is consistent about and does a good job in reinforcing.
Yeah, and I like that you run into so many of these fallen summoners there, and it's also the Calmlands are actually like this big rolling plain where people fight sin because no one lives there.
Yeah,
and so it's a cool location because you see all these crags and fissures and the damage that these battles against sin over the generations have done. So
eventually you make your way to the lower depths of the Calmland, which is the cave system.
So you went to the Chamber of the Stolen Faith, or the Cave of the Stolen Faith.
Yes, I did. So is this the character that Lulu was looking for in the Farplane?
Yes.
Okay. I guess you could say that each character gets their character moment in Final Fantasy X. I just find that Lulu's is probably the narratively weakest of the characters. Lulu has one moment where she's like, oh, you used to be a friend of mine and now you're dead. And then she's like, we're done. I'm glad that you get your resolution. It's like, man. I feel like certain character moments are stronger than others. Riku's is definitely probably the strongest. When you see Home get destroyed and she's like very emotionally distraught, like that made me feel something. Lulu talking about Lulu, Waka with his brother and like meeting his brother in the Farplane, and then Lulu. It's building all of this sympathy for Lulu because she's clearly changing. She's no longer the stoic that you were introduced to when you first meet Lulu. But I feel like after this moment in the Cavern of the Stolen Faith, she immediately goes back to being the stoic. And it's like, great, all this wonderful characterization was for fucking nothing.
I think the characterization just kind of shows why she is jaded, because at one point she wasn't, and it got someone killed.
Yeah.
Or she blames herself for getting this person killed.
I feel like the game is not articulate enough about which of those two she is.
Yep. But I like that sequence, and then once you defeat Lulu's former summoner, you get the chance to bargain with Yojimbo, because he's a faith who gives you his services for money.
So
he's like, fuck you, pay me.
One, you did not warn me that I needed 200,000 gil. So I had to sell a bunch of my shit to buy him. And two, I renamed Yojimbo because that motherfucker fleeced me, so I renamed him Tom motherfucking Nook.
That's fair. He gets his.
He gets his money.
I love that once you pay him, you can continue. You have to continue paying him every time you summon him.
Best, what was it, Zenmato? So in order to get the attack you want him to do, you have to use him like 4 or 5, like dozens of times. Keep paying him money. And if you pay him a little bit of money, he's going to use his dog, and he ain't going to do shit.
He will use progressively better weapons. He'll throw some knives if you give him some good money. He'll take out his small sword if you give him a little bit more, and then if you give him the most, he will take out the good sword, and it one-hit kills.
But you have to
bosses.
Earn that over time. You don't get that if you could give him 1,000,000 gil. And you would just still throw stars if it's your first time using him. You have to earn the right. You have to build a relationship with this guy. Otherwise, I didn't use Yojimbo all that much. I used Anima.
I do like that the way you dismiss him is by paying him nothing.
Yeah.
With other summons, you hit the dismiss button. For him, it's like, if you don't pay me, I'm out, regardless.
So yeah, the Cavern of the Stolen Faith. I wish they had done more with Lulu, because I feel like there was a great opportunity to show that she's a character with hidden depth. She has a cold exterior, but a heart of gold, or is a warm and welcoming person that has seen some shit that's wavered her faith. But
yeah, I like that it shows, this section of the game shows you that Lulu and Waka, beyond just being slightly older than the rest of the cast, they have seen a lot. This is their third summoner that they've tried to protect. This is their third
summoner. Waka even makes the point of saying he was a good guy, but he just gave up around here because he realized he has to sacrifice himself, and was like, nah.
I guess this is Waka's second, Lulu's third.
Yeah.
And that's kind of crazy that, like, this is a profession. Like, there are some people who try to walk summoners to Xanarkand, and that is just what they do with their lives at all times. That's pretty cool. And so
you make your way to the bottom of the pit, and
fight that
you have
stupid
to fight
robot.
that stupid robot thing.
That robot sucks.
That robot's terrible.
I had to use 99999 to kill that robot.
I didn't have to, but I'm getting sick and tired of these goddamn Final Fantasy bosses having attacks that, like, what was it? It was Blast Punch, which does half of your HP. And then Haymaker does like 3,000. Yep. And, Haymaker was enough to kill all my characters because most of them were not at 3,000 plus HP.
And it's so fast. That thing is so fast.
He gets 2-3 turns in a row, and then
everyone's dead.
And then your one turn, you basically have to use potions and Phoenix Downs. That guy sucks. He's not a lot of fun. I mean,
I think
actually,
he's a poor
now
design.
I remember what I did. Is I basically had Titus act as a tank. I would have Titus use Provoke, or I would have Oron use his version of Provoke, and I would just have that character act as a tank, one character constantly damaging the robot, and one character constantly healing Titus or Oron. And that works. That got the job done. I don't like the fact, especially in the late game, how there will be upcoming boss battle types that are very problematic if you don't plan ahead of time, and incredibly, stupidly easy if you have the right equipment, the right status effect, or the right element planned out. Because you don't know any of that shit. You don't know that the character that you're about to fight is completely elemental and has like stone gaze and will cause you to be turned into stone. And it's real fucked up when those characters will petrify your characters, shatter them into pieces, and now you are stuck trying to beat this boss with 2 characters.
And the fact that like a person gets shattered right in front of you and no one jumps in. Oh, your party members who are like hanging just outside the wing, they're like, "Oh, I guess we're good.
Guess we're good. We're stuck using 2 characters against
you guys. Got it. That was fucked up what they did. I'm not getting in there."
And luckily, your advice that you gave to me in terms of Mount Gagazet was, hey, Kimahri is a seriously underrated character. Do this, 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 and this. And so my Kimahri was super great, super leveled up, had some of the best abilities. He had Holy, he had Copycat, he had a bunch of great attacks.
Kimahri wrecks shit.
In my blog, I had like 6 or 7 people say, yeah, I don't like Mount Gagazet because I never liked Kimahri because I didn't understand how to use his blue magic ability, and this was the level that kicked my ass, and I got stuck and had to grind for like 4 hours.
Yeah. Use Kimahri. He's the only character who has to call an ISO against an enemy and take them on one-on-one. But I do like that fight, if you keep using Lancet on Biron and Yankee,
you can get all those abilities.
Yeah, you get almost all the blue magic in one fight.
So after you do the the Cavern of the Stolen Faith, you beat Defender X because, there are a bunch of people who are pissed off at you. You enter Mount Gagazet, and the introduction to Mount Gagazet is
awesome.
Fan-freaking-tastic. It's great. Oh, man. If it weren't for the fact that the encounter rate to Mount Gagazet was stupidly high, it would have been one of my favorite levels. It has great music. Your interactions with the Ronso are some of the strongest with NPCs in the entire game. The sense of a distinct culture and how the story progresses at the mountain are truly excellent.
Yeah, the Ronso Maester, he basically abandons Yevon, but says, hey, we're still not letting you through because you're traitors to Yevon. You still can't go. And then Yuna basically explains what she's doing to the Maester, and he says, you're strong enough. This mountain respects strength.
The scenes with Yuna are among the strongest in the entire game. Like,
and don't they say they'll make a statue of Yuna if no one else will make a statue of her? The Ronso will, and we'll put a horn on her. Yeah,
and the game does a really excellent. It does an excellent job of conveying the Ronso as a distinct culture, a distinct race, and there's a real sense of discovery and wonderment out Mount Gagazet. And like I said, it's the strongest performance Yuna has in the game.
Yep, it's really good. And really Kimahri, with his scene with Biron and Yankee, they say, she might be strong enough, but you're not. And then after you beat both of them, they're like, no, Kimahri, you're strong too. We're going to make sure that if anyone tries to follow you up this mountain, we will take them down.
They basically broed out. They had a bro out. It's like, we're bro now. We're bros now, man. We're going to protect you. Oh, yeah.
And then you go. So
there's one thing real quick.
Go ahead.
There's a Jex Spear in Mount Gagazet.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's probably the best Jex Spear in the entire game because it's Lord Braska doing his death diary. And there is a whip around or basically pivot where there's something with Yuna that's I quite enjoyed the death diary from Lord Braska.
Yeah, there's a death diary from Lord Braska basically saying, Yuna, I loved you so much. All these other people send their regards. If you see this, it means I've defeated sin. Thank you. And I love you.
I like the grave. Yeah, the grave markings you see on the mountain as you're going up it. And it, again, is it's the game being very consistent about how hundreds of people have tried to kill Sin and failed. Thousands of people have tried to kill Sin and fail. And it does a really good job of conveying the misery that these people experience when sin is active. Is people are willing to make this ultimate sacrifice, get this far in the journey, and you just see bodies along, just skeletons on your path as you get closer and closer to sin.
Yeah, and then you find Yuna's sphere further up the mountain, and that is her death diary. And it explains, I think at one point you were questioning why Yuna was like standing all alone by herself, and like she reacted to something Titus was saying in a weird way on the Mi'ihen High Road. And it turns out that is basically her recording this death diary, like saying to every single character, like, you know, I love you.
It is also the most discordant reminder that Yuna cannot say Titus's name. It's like, and what about my new friend?
Star player of the Xanarkand Apes. That's all you can say because for some reason you made this character nameable. It was the biggest mistake they made in this whole game.
Oh, no.
Titus nameable.
Having the Jek spheres be collectible items is probably...
I don't know. Having the main character and love interest, who they made a sequel to this game and they still can't say his name.
Are you fucking kidding me?
Yeah.
They don't say Titus in Final Fantasy X too?
No. Him. Pronouns. Nothing but pronouns for 2 full games.
God.
What a terrible mistake.
Do they at least call him Titus in Kingdom Hearts?
Yes.
Oh, thank God.
Thank goodness. But yes. Yeah, and that's a huge mistake. Like, she's saying this elaborate,
story
farewell
about how
to someone she can't name.
Him, and they feel like my time with you was short, but I feel like we've had the best
So this
time
is what it
of our
feels
lives.
like.
And I want you, leader of the Xanarkand Apes, to know that I love you.
Basically.
And 90% of the character dynamic between Yuna and Titus is a love story. It's related to them loving each other. So Titus can say Yuna, but Yuna can never say Titus. And there are these long-winded speeches about her feelings about Titus, and he calls him, you, or the leader
Star
of the
player
Xanarkand
Apes. Yeah. What a
that
mistake.
That is hilarious. That is hilarious.
And so you, it's a really touching scene. I think it's really well done. And you eventually then climb your way up Mount Gagazet.
And there's a bullshit boss battle with Seymour.
Yeah, you fight Seymour because Seymour killed every Ronso. He killed all of them.
Actually, you can go back to Mount Gagazet and see that
he kills almost all of them.
Yeah, there's some Ronso left, but
the ones that are left are like on the Blitzball team, and so they were not on Mount Gagazet.
Seymour Flux is probably one of the hardest boss battles in the entire game.
Yeah, it sucks a lot. The way I beat this the first time I played this game was I got every single Aeon into overdrive, summoned them, used their overdrive, and then he immediately killed them. And I just kept doing that until I ran out of Aeons.
So there's multiple reasons why Seymour Flux, the second battle with Seymour, is unnecessarily difficult. The first reason is that Seymour will summon the Mordecocious, which is like the sidekick that Seymour always has during his battles, like the one you had Mordecai during Bevel. And he has an ability called Lance of Atrophy, which can potentially inflict the zombie status effect. Now, of all the characters that inflict the zombie status effect, Seymour is the one who takes advantage of it in the most messed up, rawest way possible. So after casting Zombie on your character, he will cast Curaga or Life on those characters, immediately killing them.
Yep.
It is the rawest shit I have ever seen in a Final Fantasy boss battle. So if you're not quick enough, in 2 moves, your characters are dead.
Yep. It's real messed up.
You mentioned it. If you're like me and when in doubt, you cast your Aeons to be just damage sponges, Seymour can banish Aeons and one-shot them. So unless you have the overdrive for your Aeon, there is no reason why you should use your Aeons. They should be only used as a last resort. You're not going to get a turn to heal. Thank God Seymour is always weak to bio, because I think that was my largest amount of damage that I used on Seymour.
I used 9999 and then threw, I think, 2 fire gems at him, and then he died.
Yeah, well, we're going to talk about how
But that fight sucks.
Seymour uses Reflect and Protect on himself, and he usually gets 2 turns, so he can cast both in a row.
Yeah, he's one of the smartest enemy AIs.
He is the smartest boss in a Final Fantasy game I have ever seen. He buffs himself up. He knows how to use Zombie, and he takes advantage of status effects in a way I have never seen a Final Fantasy boss. There's one more that also uses the Zombie status effect in a real fucked up way. Well, we will talk about Unalesca in a little bit. But I feel like Seymour is even rawer. But this all pales in comparison to Total Annihilation.
Yeah, that move just comes and, well, guess everyone's dead then.
I guess everyone's dead. Great! Don't you love it when a boss has an attack that basically can wipe out all of your party because you're at a point in the game where you're not quite leveled up enough, unless you're a crazy person, to deal with that shit.
Yeah, Seymour, this fight sucks. It's probably my least favorite boss fight in the game. Though that Defender robot is pretty close, and Unalesca is probably the 3rd least favorite.
Oh, I really hated the Unalesca.
3rd most hated.
Okay, for me, it's probably Seymour, Unalesca, Jekt, and then Defender X.
I don't mind Jekt, because but the Jekt fight you have, and we'll talk about it later, but I don't think the Jekt fight's that bad.
I was dumb. Hey, Gino, I'm still bad at playing Final Fantasy games.
You could just say I'm bad at playing games, and that'd be accurate.
But I'm really good at playing strategy games and simulation games.
Okay, then yeah, you're very bad at playing
I'm
Final
really
Fantasy.
good at playing Japanese visual novels about catgirl maids. I can left click real good. I'm good at that.
I got that on lockdown.
And then after you're done with Seymour Flux, the worst fucking plot twist in the game happens.
Welcome to the plot twist where you find out that Titus is a dream.
Can I rant? Can I rant?
Well, find
here's
a giant...
You summarize the story from Seymour to the plot twist, and then I need to go on a rant.
Okay, so what happens is you basically go over the hump of Mount Gagazet, and then you see this large cluster of faith that are summoning something. And there's this, like,
water, 'cause I'm
pillar. There's this pillar of water that is kind of going up into the sky that you can't really see where it's going or what it's doing, but it seems real majestic. And so when you walk by it, Titus touches one of these faith, and then he kind of conks out. And when he wakes up, he is in Xanarkand, the Xanarkand that he remembers, the Xanarkand he grew up in, and he is, like, right next to this mysterious kid, the faith of Bahamut, that you see over and over and over again. And the kid basically explains, yo, all the faith in this place are summoning where you were born. That Xanarkand that you grew up in, that is all a summon that us faith have been summoning for 1,000 years, because we wanted basically the place where we lived to keep living. And unfortunately, by summoning that place into existence, we also summoned sin. So that Xanarkand that you are from is actually in sin or tied to sin in some way. And so by destroying sin, you will destroy that reality. You will destroy all of the faith, and you will kill yourself.
Fuck. I like how you had a hard time summarizing it because of how stupid it is.
I mean, that's the best I can summarize it. I do like that the explanation for why sin can take Titus out of that Xanarkand is because sin is made of the same stuff as that Xanarkand, because it's not real. But I guess it's also like this tragic thing, because that Xanarkand, I don't know if that Xanarkand is just constantly...
Don't you try to apologize for this plot twist.
Like, is it getting destroyed every X number of years by,
that's
are
the
they
other
recreating
thing
it?
is I feel like it only makes sense in isolation, in this isolated snippet. When you think about how it relates to the rest of the story, it unpins and undoes almost all of the goodwill you have for the game.
Yeah, the notion that Jecht, like, this kid basically said, I'm going to get Jecht out of here and he's going to save everyone, and then I'm going to get Titus out of here and he's going to save everyone. I don't understand, like, has Jecht been born and killed for 1,000 years? Like,
all of this... I'm sorry.
It's bad.
I'm sorry. So, can I rant?
Yeah, go.
Okay.
ISO.
So, it's all in the name of this fucking story being about a kid overcoming his abusive father. That's basically what Final Fantasy X is about. And that part of the story is really good. That part of the story about the abusive relationship, coming to terms about the abuse that Jecht inflicted on him, and Jecht coming to terms with the fact that he was not a great father and he's sorry about everything he had done. Fantastic. Fan-fucking-tastic. Getting from point A to point B is the problem I have with. You don't, I'm saying this not against you, Gino. I'm saying this against Final Fantasy. You don't get the right to fucking pull the rug from underneath me in a very basic, simple, pleasurable story like this. You don't have the right. You didn't earn the right to do this, Final Fantasy X. You did one scene in the very beginning where this ghost child was in fucking Titus's dreams.
You don't have time to do that after the game.
You did that once, and you didn't even have the planning to reinforce that in the story ever again.
Well, the kid
There's no progression in terms of who the kid is until you fucking get to this point of the story.
No, that's not true. He shows up in some of the flashbacks, and he shows up in something. It's still
there's
dumb.
No hints. There's no hints in terms of who he is, what role he plays. Like, normally when you have this mysterious character, you learn a little bit about the mystery every time you see them.
Well, you do when you see him in Bavel, and you see him.
Oh, so the ones like 2 scenes before the reveal.
Yeah, I mean, it's not good. I'm not saying it's good. I'm pointing out to you the scaffolding that they built. It is bad scaffolding. You would die if you tried to use the scaffolding.
It doesn't make sense. It doesn't do anything. So who the fuck is Yu Yevon? Was Yu Yevon summoned when they were dreaming? Like, we're going to have all our erotic dreams, and then Yu Yevon, I guess he's here too, and he's going to use this fucking monster we summoned when we were dreaming.
So when you went back to Mount Gagazet later on in the game and saw the Ronso, did you talk to the historian dude?
Yes.
Okay, so then you know Yu Yevon is like a summoner from Zanarkand who basically summoned this gigantic thing to both preserve Zanarkand and defeat Bavel because there was a big war.
Somehow he turned it into a bug.
Yeah.
Fuck it. This fucking game. Like, it's literally... It's insulting. I was insulted when this game did this.
Yep.
It's like you spent all this time trying to build my sympathy for this character.
And it's so grounded. And it goes back to being grounded.
In reality. It's about a kid being abused by his father who was an alcoholic.
And damn it, the stupid... The moments that they pay off Titus dying when you defeat Sin, like... The moments later on are freaking amazing. They're some of the best, most poignant scenes in any Final Fantasy game. But damn it, this twist is so dumb.
And the game already has something in the story before this twist that could have serviced that better. Just have fucking Titus be a faith. Don't have him be the dreams of the faith. Just have him be an unsent.
Sure.
Why not?
Why not have him be a time traveler? Who cares?
Who cares? You don't need to have him be, we were dreaming, so we were dreaming of our city that had been destroyed. And so that dream city created a monster who killed the dream people and then set into motion this monster that's going to create all the chaos in the world.
Yeah, it's not a great look.
But I feel like, why did they have to go to this degree? There's no answer. They didn't have to go to this degree. There was literally there are literally 10 different solutions to this problem, which didn't require this twist. And I all thought of it. It's like, why can't it just be that Titus is a faith? Like, he's a faith that doesn't need to be housed in his little thing. That would have made. Don't you think that would have made actually a great deal of sense?
Why not?
And then he has to go float into the air and turn into dust and then disappear.
Why not?
Why
he
not
could have been anything?
Why not have Titus be an unsent? And like, that's like him and fucking
Oren
would have. Spoilers, guy. Oren's an unsent as well, which is actually one of the better scenes in the game. It's
and that also is really foreshadowed.
And that is exactly him being an unsent. Oren being an unsent is not surprising. Like, even Titus is like, no, this isn't surprising, Oren. I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah, I guess you're right. You could have pieced it all together. In fact, I did piece it together. One of my predictions was right again. But it's a dream world. Like, all of this busy work, all of this bullshit scaffolding is to create a grounded in reality story about a child who was abused by an alcoholic.
And, like, have these stories of sacrifice and of striving against incredible odds and regret and children who are growing up without their parents and these sorts of things that the lengths they will go. It's about racial conflicts and religious conflicts. It's got all this stuff going on. And at the end of the day,
it doesn't pull its shit together.
It's a Biggie Smalls song. It was all a dream. Why?
Why? It's the oldest trick in the book.
And it's it works so poorly. But thankfully, they only really linger on this once or twice, and that's it.
But you know what? I hate that even more. If you're gonna try and do it was all a dream, if you're gonna play that card, double down in your bullshit. You know how in like Final Fantasy VIII?
No.
It doubles down and it's stupid.
Yeah, but you know what? Final Fantasy VIII's a bad story. It's ludicrous. It is insane. Insanity is all that saves it in some ways, and Laguna. Those are the only things that save it. Final Fantasy X, they just need to, like, it has a good story. We can move this on. Okay, it was all a dream, but wait, don't leave. We're going to go to Xanarkand now, and it's going to be some of the most incredible stuff in this whole game.
And character stuff ever that you will see in the entire game. But it's just like, oh, hey, here's this plot twist, and we're not going to talk about this until the end. So
thanks for that. Actually,
only reason why he's a dream is that he can die at the end of the game and provide this incredibly emotionally poignant end. And there were 10 different ways they could have done it to where it was made logical sense, and they decided to do this stupid bullshit.
He could have had to be the final.
He could have been the final summoning. It's like, oh shit, Titus is the final summoning to kill Yu Yevon.
There were a million different story.
He was the secret all along.
Stupid story loopholes you could have used, but they didn't. And so you go into Xanarkand. You go through some trials in Mount Gagazet, and that's kind of dumb.
Those were
you
dumb.
Get through that fast.
Why?
But then you get to the beginning of the game. You get to that fire. You get to Titus saying, this is our story. Thank you,
Yep.
And now we got to do this.
The Sanctuary Keeper boss is not fun. It's got photon wings.
I hit him with one
you're
fire
using
gem
your
and he
bullshit
died.
technique. I don't understand why Waka, Titus, and Riku are the only ones who can swim in this game. 90%,
There's a bunch of islands.
90% of this world is water. Why is Lulu afraid of ruining her makeup?
Her dress just makes no sense underwater.
I mean, Yuna, they had their J-pop scene where they're swimming, flying in water space. She can't swim?
Nope.
Oron's a ghost man. Is he going to just disappear into puffs of energy?
His sword's real heavy. I don't know.
We should probably talk. Yeah, Oron is an unsent. It's one of the better. It's the.
We'll get to that with Yunalesca, because you see the scene where
twist.
He dies.
It's such a good twist. That is such a good twist. It might be the best twist in the game.
It's real good.
It's real
good. But the scene, I love the scene where they are on the precipice of Zanarkand.
And they have the callback.
Yeah, and they have the callback. Then you go into Zanarkand, and it has completely different music than everything else. It's got this wistful, almost, it's a rendition of Steki Dane, the main theme of. I don't know if it's Steki Dane or the main theme of Final Fantasy X. It's one of the two. And it's a great instrumental piece, and it slowly swells, and it plays through enemy fights, which is great.
Final Fantasy X is probably one of my favorite examples of a leitmotif in a video game, because that theme plays more than once, and it uses it twice. It uses it for the main theme, leitmotif, and then it uses it for the Hymn of the Faith. So it has multiple leitmotifs, and they're both really done well. Final Fantasy X earns the right to have music be a part of its story.
Totally
earns
and then,
it.
Once you fight your way through like the outskirts of Zanarkand, you then get to the dome of Zanarkand, and you start seeing flashbacks of other final summoners.
You see the flashback for them. Guardians. You see the flashback for Oron and Braska and Jact.
Yep.
And those flashbacks are way better than any of the flashbacks that are oriented with Titus.
Yep. You see, like, I love that there are only like 4 or 5 people who have ever gotten there before.
Absolutely. And some people even failed. There's the time where Wakka's like, well, yeah, she was my first summer that I was with. We got this far and she died. And it's like, wow.
Yeah. And you have, in that dome, you get to see Seymour's mom and kind of find out how she became a faith.
Mm-hmm.
Turns out Seymour's mom sacrificed herself, I guess, to Yunalesca to become a faith for Seymour, with the idea that if you had the power to defeat Sin Seymour, then people would finally accept you.
I feel like
because he's mixed race child.
Yeah, that the game really doesn't do the best job of. It's a real bad thing. Like, the game does not humanize
Seymour at all. That is the one scene that beckons to his backstory, kind of in any real way.
He was a victim of racism.
Yep, and that's the explanation for everything. So he's going to kill everyone.
So the reason why he hates this world is because he was a victim of racism. And I'm not trying to belittle racism or how painful and terrible it is, but
there's one scene.
The game literally only has one scene where it's like, oh yeah, Seymour was a victim of racism. That's the reason why he wants to destroy the world.
Yeah, and he never gets any other moments, and he never says any of this.
And he never says any of this. He never makes it known. It's like, considering how many times he's provided opportunities to have his shitty affectations or I'm a villain, blah, blah, blah speeches, you'd think he'd go over why he wants to destroy the world at least once.
Instead, he just does a lot of hand motions, like, I'm going to destroy 1, and then 2, and then 3. And he just does that a whole lot.
3 worlds destroyed.
But yeah, instead, he just is a terrible villain.
And
Kuja, way better.
Sephiroth, way better. I think you would even argue Sephiroth's way better. Even if Sephiroth's story is stupid.
He flexes, and he's got some moments where he's cool. Seymour you whip his ass a bunch of times, and he says the same things every time.
Unlike, and Seymour is going to be kind of my jumping point for this. the story really loses sight of who the main true villain of the story is right about at this point. Because you got Seymour trying to become one with sin to destroy a world that was racist towards him and resulted in the death of his mother. You have Jack, who Titus is trying to come to terms with in terms of the abuse that he faced with him and coming to terms with that his father did reform and possibly needs to accept him. And then you have Yevon doing some bullshit.
And you have Unalesca, who is kind of the emblem. And you have Unalesca,
who also has her own agenda in terms of maintaining. And you got the game really loses sight of who the main target of the fear, suffering. It loses target of having just one villain, like one keystone to the story in terms of why we are on this journey.
Basically, really at this point, you're fighting Seymour, who's just this lunatic who is completely unmoored from everyone else's needs. He just wants to destroy things. You've got Unalesca, who's kind of this representation of the status quo and how it is dangerous. You've got Jecht as kind of a metaphorical villain that Titus has to overcome. And then you've got Sin as the actual representation of all of these problems. And so Sin stays the real villain, but like you said, it muddies the punch where you've got all these different things, but at least when you then take on Unalesca and take on kind of these different establishments, I feel it's impactful. The moment where you're dealing with Unalesca and you realize, hey, the way that you defeat Sin is by sacrificing one of your guardians, turning them into the final Aeon, and then that Aeon is strong enough to defeat Sin. That's a pretty impactful scene. And defeating her and basically saying, no, we're not going to keep sacrificing people and summoners. We'll find a better way.
Have you ever seen the movie Bad Boys 2?
Bits of it.
Oh, okay. So I'm going to make a comparison. Final Fantasy X is a lot like Bad Boys 2 in that Bad Boys 2, which is probably Michael Bay's greatest movie ever, it ends...
In the Land of the Blind.
Yeah.
The One-Eyed Man is King.
The movie ends... and then it keeps going. Like, they capture the villain, they defeat the bad guy, and then the movie goes on for another 45 minutes. And I feel like, here's another example. It's kind of like the last Lord of the main trilogy. It's like the last Lord of the Rings film, where, okay, movie's over, bad guy's dead. Wait a minute, this is 3 hours? We're only at the 2-hour mark. This movie's going to go on for another hour. Final Fantasy X gets... Our party essentially gets the job done, and then it goes on. And it keeps going. And then, now we got to fight Jack. Now we got to do this Sin stuff. Unalesca, I feel like the structure and the order of things is not correct.
Yeah, you finish the pilgrimage, and once you finish the pilgrimage, that feels like it should be the end of the game.
Sure.
But actually you then have to defeat Sin. And
then you have to fight an evil bug in space or heaven, and then you have to watch another series of cutscenes, and then you have to wait for the late title card. It's a game that should have ended 2 or 3 times before it actually ended. The only reason why you like the end at the end is because what they do is really good.
Yeah.
If what they had done was bullshit, you wouldn't like, oh yeah, they probably should have ended at Unalesca.
Yeah, totally. I mean, yeah, if the part at the end wasn't so good, I wouldn't like the ending so much. But I think that everything they do in Sin and with Sin after the Unalesca fight is actually well done and well paced. So the part where I think the pacing gets screwed up is if you then, after Unalesca, so do you want to talk about Unalesca for a bit?
Yeah, we probably should.
She sucks.
She sucks so much. Oddly enough,
killing her is hard.
Real quick, the Zanarkand Cloister of Trials, probably one of the most innocuous, least offensive Cloister of Trials in the entire game.
Yeah, it's not.
You just got to get the Tetris pieces to appear. It's not a big deal. Having the boss. So here's the reason why I'm mentioning the Cloister of Trials. Having the Cloister of Trials have a boss battle with the Spectral Keeper, which is a relatively straightforward boss battle, other than the fact that you have to move around on the spheres or the glyphs.
On the hexes.
And then the Spectral Keeper inflicts Berserk, which, if you're not careful about, is just
bad because he counterattacks.
He counterattacks, and then he has mines. So ostensibly, there are 2 boss battles in a row. Okay?
You do get a save in between them.
You get a save in between them, but you don't get a save in between the cutscenes. So if you die at Unalesca, you got to watch that bullshit cutscene, which lasts forever, multiple times.
Yeah.
And the Unalesca battle has 3 distinct parts to it.
The first phase is fine. The second and the third phase get hairy.
The second and third phase, that third phase, holy shit. So, which is sad because what the game does with Unalesca is very honorable. It's really a good conclusion to the perspective of the Church of Yevon, is maintaining the status quo gives people hope. Maintaining the status quo ensures that humanity is preserved, and maintaining the status quo, while painful in some regards, provides brief and momentary lapses of peace. And that, even if it's eternal, our fight with sin, is better than nothing. We've tried. And this is basically the perspective of Unalesca is we've tried to find a different solution, and we have failed. This is all we got. And so Unalesca as a character is quite interesting. The perspective of the church, very much interesting. Fighting Unalesca is just a massive annoyance.
Yeah, though I do like her character model, like the 3 forms, where it's just like her, and then she gets a little bit higher up, and you can see that there are like tentacles underneath, and then she pulls back, and it's just a giant monster face.
Medusa head. It kind of reminded me of Ultimisia.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Anima just looks like Ultimisia's final form.
Correct.
Exactly.
So
you have some complaints about the Unalesca fight?
Having Unalesca automatically kill anyone who doesn't have the zombie effect on them is bullshit.
But wait.
Just no.
What if she also wait. What if she also killed everyone who didn't have the zombie? If she both insta-killed people with zombie and people without zombie, but depending on which form she's in, she insta-kills a different subset. So what you want is half your party to be zombified and half to be not zombified.
So here's the hardest part of the battle is that phase 2. Phase 1's easy. Phase 1's just deal a bunch of damage and she's done. She sometimes casts status effects like silence, whatever. You got remedies, you got your special shit, you got your items. You're done. You're done. Phase 2, she starts using an attacker called Hellbiter that casts the status effect of zombie on all your party members. Basically all your party. And she starts casting curative spells on your party, which will inflict damage as long as the zombie effect is active. And if you try and heal those characters, you will kill them. And in phase 3, anyone who doesn't have zombie, she will one-shot with Mega Death.
Which is a really good name for an ability.
You have to keep swapping characters. You have to keep swapping characters in and out of combat with half of them with the zombie effect, then pull them out, and then keep at least this character. And then once you get close to killing phase 2, have all those zombified characters, because then she's going to automatically cast Mega Death, and that's going to insta-kill your characters unless they're zombified. And I didn't know this, so the first time I played this game, I got one-shotted on phase 3. That's just a giant fuck you, because you have to rewatch both of the Unalesca cutscenes all over again.
Yep.
And they're super long cutscenes. Like we said, the perspective that Unalesca shares, what she contributes to the story, great.
The first time you hear it.
The first time. Hearing it the 7th time, it starts to lose its effect. It starts to dampen the experience.
Yeah. It's not great. It's a hard fight. But once you win that fight,
you feel joyous.
And you get an airship.
Here's the thing that I realized. I forgot to pick up the Sun Crest, and so I had to run back and pick it up.
Well, that's good. You had to go back to get the last Destruction Sphere, too.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. Just a load of bullshit. Just a load of bullshit. She has an attack called Punch, and that removes all of the status effects that are positive. So even if you try to get ahead, she just takes all your shit away.
Yep, she's real messed up. And
so
then you get an
cool
airship.
She turns into Medusa head. Yeah, I mean, yeah, the airship's pretty cool. It's really curious that the story waits until the literal last mission to become an open world.
And by open world, it just means you can go back to the places you visited before,
but not all of them.
A few
not
other
all.
ones.
Not all of them.
Yeah, you can't go to any of the places with temples.
For example, I wanted to get all the Jek spheres. So I already got the first one. That's the one that happens when you get Sphere Morph. And then I was like, oh, yeah, I'm going to get the one at Makalania Woods. Okay, fine, got that one, no problem. Number 3, Besaid Village. Oh, I have to go to east of the temple. Got to get the Jek sphere over by Besaid Village. So I go over to the port. I'm all walking down. I meet Gata, or was it Luzu? And he's training whichever one survived. He's training a bunch of people to become crusaders because he knows he's got to do his part to make the world a better place. And I walk up to Besaid, and it's like, wow, it's good to be back. It's good to be here. Some guy dressed up as a priest pops out of nowhere. Screen goes dark. Calls Yuna an infidel. Summons Dark Valfor, who then proceeds to kill all my party in one shot.
They're messed up, the Dark Aeons.
The Dark Aeons are fucked up. So I couldn't get all the Jek spheres because some of the locations were covered in evil people. So the first Jek sphere was the one you got in Makalania Woods. No, that's the second one. The first one is the one that you get after beating Sphere Morph. The second one, they have to bust Jek out of prison. The third one is them in Besaid, and basically Braska wishes for Yuna to not become a summoner, so she is going to be raised as far away as possible from evil people and the summoners. But she does anyway, because destiny.
And Kimari takes care of her as, like, Braska's
even though
dying
Oron
wish.
was supposed to, but, he dies and has to raise another kid.
Or,
basically,
Braska.
Or Oron has to raise 2 kids, and he can't do both. He's a ghost. Jek Sphere 4 is just them talking about parentage.
I like the sphere where it's on Mihen High Road, and it turns out that the Chocobo Eater was a problem 10 years ago also.
Yeah.
And Jek said the exact same thing as Titus.
Oh, yeah, we've got to do the same thing. I like the Jek sphere by the Moonflow where you learn about how Jek got drunk. It's like, I'm sorry I got drunk, and I'm
not going to drink anymore. And he gives up drinking because he almost ruined the pilgrimage.
He hit an elephant with a sword and almost ruined a pilgrimage. So now his decades worth of alcohol abuse just disappear because of his own prerogative. That I take umbrage with. That's irresponsible and that's insulting.
I do enjoy that all of the call-outs that Oren says, like you're like your father, and some of the other call-outs pay off.
They come through. They pay through, but having just one event be the event that convinces a person to give up their abuse of relationship with an intoxicant or a drug, having just one event be the end-all be-all event is just as responsible as the romantic drunk, like the drunk who consumes alcohol to be creative. It's very irresponsible to do that. But again, this was a story that was written over 10 years ago. I'll make my peace with it because the conclusion of it is good. And, one of the Jek spears is Oron talking to Kinnock and saying Kinnock to him, this promotion I'm about to get was meant for you. That one was pretty cool as well.
Yep. And then you do see, before the Unalesca fight, you see how Oren died.
Yes.
He came back after Jekt and Braska both died, basically stricken with grief. He challenges Unalesca to a fight, and Unalesca just smites him, basically.
Yeah. One thing about the Unalesca fight that I think is a little cheesy is when all of the characters realize, oh, wait, our religion is bullshit. Sin won't actually die if we do the final summoning. That's the event that convinces all of the Yevonites.
Well,
Their church is run by zombies. They see the hypocrisy of their religion. But no.
They're basically
this is the
fighting.
nail in the coffin.
They're fighting Jesus, and Jesus is telling them there was
It's
no
all bullshit.
It's all bullshit. And I would say that would shake my faith.
And also the speech that all the characters do as they're about to fight Unalesca, it's so over the top.
Yeah.
Like Oron saying, "Now we must take control of our destinies." Like, did I all of a sudden start playing a B movie?
This is your story.
This is our story. What am I doing? Like, when did you guys become characters from a high school student's creative arts project?
Yeah. Good question.
But yeah, you get the ship, and this is where Chris Zombiepie Redacted talks about a bunch of side quests that made him hate himself.
Okay, go right ahead. Which one makes you hate yourself the most?
I think they all made me hate myself. The one that made me hate myself the least was getting no encounters, because that is legit. No encounters in Final Fantasy X is so good.
Okay.
So good.
Now, which one made you hate yourself the most?
Getting the hidden coordinates was actually pretty good. The airship passwords was fine. I didn't want to get all the Albed primers because it's very little payoff. Village of the Cactuars, you're right. It's ridiculous. I did maybe 2 or 3 missions and was like, man, I don't want to fucking do this. I want to get all these Cactuar statues and then see one referencey, like fan servicey level. Like, no.
I have a Cactuar plushie, and I didn't want to do that.
I got Yojimbo. I quite enjoy Yojimbo in the 2 times I used him. And then Anima.
And you didn't get the Magus Sisters, but the Magus Sisters are pretty cool. They are.
I saw the animation for the Magus Sisters, great, but don't make me capture 10.
That sucked. How you get them sucks.
Animals.
But when you get them, they are a summon that you basically tell them what you would like them to do. You give them prompts, and then they kind of go off of that.
Yeah, they're actors in a troupe, kind of.
Yeah, it's cool.
The Baj Temple is actually quite enjoyable. I enjoyed my time in the Baj Temple.
You take down that giant fish. You get revenge on the fish.
But the fish is Seymour's mother, who converted herself into a faith.
Oh, no. I mean, there's a fish that almost eats you when you go to Baj Temple.
Biso Sama, or Biso Zega, or Gio Sageo. The one thing I really don't like about that boss fight is, again, it's an underwater level, so you're stuck using Titus, Waka, and Riku.
Luckily, that's great. 2/3 of the good party, so.
Yeah. Actually, the way I leveled up Waka is he was just as strong a DSP character. He was basically my second go-to tank if Auron had low HP.
And that's kind of how the game sets it up, because Waka's part of the sphere grid, and the normal sphere grid ends at Auron's, where Auron starts.
Yeah, he's basically a damage sponge. So yeah, Geosagea, whatever the fuck.
Fish.
Zombie fish.
Cage
it
fish.
looks like a zombie, so I thought it was undead. I tried using a Phoenix Down. It's like, oh man, that doesn't work.
Nope.
But the fish monster is also weak to basically all elements, so it's not a big deal. It's just, again, having characters or having boss fights which can cast Petrify on characters and then use their moves to shatter those characters. It's a real messed up thing.
I think you just get shattered immediately when you're underwater.
If you're underwater, you immediately get shattered. So if you don't have any immunities, that attack is an insta-kill.
But you then get Anima. You get rewarded with the best summon in the game, and Seymour's mom basically says, hey, kill my son, please. He's a monster.
Yeah. It's quite well done. I tried to dodge the lightning again.
How'd that go?
Poorly.
Great.
I got to 25.
Outstanding.
And then I went to the Omega Ruins, even though you told me, don't go to the Omega Ruins, you are not prepared. And I don't know, man. You know, I had no encounters, so that was cool. And then I beat Ultima Weapon and was like, I don't know what the game keeps telling me about how that was an Omega Weapon. That was clearly Omega Weapon. Gino, tell me that was Omega Weapon. I beat Omega Weapon. We're all good. We don't have to look back and feel like I need to go back and do stuff. We're all good. I beat Omega Weapon. We're all good.
Yep, you killed the thing.
I killed the thing. I killed the first thing. The thing looked like it's...
The explanation for what Omega Weapon's supposed to be is
cool. It's pretty cool. It's
He's like
stupid
a warrior
in the best
monk
way. He's a warrior monk who got corrupted and then became an Aeon monster thing.
Yeah.
But it's 1,000,000 HP, so...
Fuck that.
Fuck that. And so that leads us basically... Was there anything else that I did? We've covered everything. The cloisters. Oh, I tried to do Blitzball again.
How'd that go?
Did
you recruit some good people?
I did try to recruit people, but
Did
I got
you
a 0-0.
Waka?
I can recruit Waka?
Yeah. He is the... I think he, like, gets 1 gil a game or something, or 10 gil. He's real cheap, but he's pretty solid. Once you get the airship, you can recruit Waka again. And, or no, I think it's just once you leave home, I think you can recruit Waka. But Waka... He starts out okay. He doesn't scale well into the late game.
So, Gino,
you know who is the secret best, or not so secret, like the best blitzball player?
It's Keepa.
Brother.
Oh yeah, I got Brother.
Riku's brother. He's the fastest character in the game, and
he's super fast.
Speed is real important because he can outrun every other character and then just get shots on the goalie by loop. Like you do like 1 loop around the pool, kite everyone, and then outrun them to the goalie, and then take a shot.
Anyways. Gino, do you ever get the celestial weapons for the characters?
No. I got the weapon for Titus once. And
Once.
Yuna.
Once.
I got the one for Titus and Yuna. That was it.
Yeah.
It's so convoluted. You have to get a mirror, and then you have to polish the mirror, and then you need to get 2 crests, 1 for each character, and then you unlock the best weapon. But until you do that, like, you can unlock half of its potential, and if it like gives you no AP or XP until you unlock the full potential, and when you unlock the full potential, like the no XP, no AP abilities get replaced with good abilities. It's bullshit. It's bullshit. Don't do it. It's not worth it. You don't need to.
It's not worth it. Yeah, there's also it's almost like the game has all of these mechanics which makes needing to get the celestial weapons totally and utterly irrelevant.
Yeah, you just mix 2 doors to tomorrow and then do 9 straight 9s to everything.
Or just cast Holy and then copycat Holy.
Yeah.
Or Quick Hit.
Cast Entrust on Riku with your other characters who have limit breaks, and then she just has limit break all the time. Or Overdrive.
Yeah, or have... what was another strategy that I like to use every now and again? Oh, yeah. Like, have characters just do shit tons of damage.
Yeah, that's pretty strong. Summon Anima ever.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Anima is quite good. We already kind of talked about the story with Belgamine. Had it not been for the Magus sisters, I could have concluded the story with her. I think what you get out of Belgamine in terms of a character, it could have certainly done a little bit more, but it was what it was. It's kind of messed up in hindsight that you're allowed to use however many summons you have against her, and she's stuck using 1.
Yeah.
But whatever. I purposely went up to her once after a boss fight because one of my Aeons had died, so I went up to her, selected Valfor, and then she healed up my Aeons.
I think if you just go to a save point, that heals them up.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
well,
it heals up everything.
Sin.
So
God is the... other than...
You start the fight with Sin by having the entirety of Spira sing the Hymn of the Faith, and that's awesome. And he just chills for a bit because everyone's singing, and he likes that song.
So, Gino, I've been trying to think about this.
Oh, did you... I guess before we talk about Sin a little bit, the stuff that you learn on Mount Gagazet from the history dude is pretty cool, I think.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
That Bavel basically went to war with Xanarkin.
Or against Xanarkin.
Bavel was the Machina city, and Xanarkin was the city of the summoners. And Bavel was going to win. And so
this was a question I actually was going to ask you, but keep going.
And then they summon, basically Sin gets summoned as like a final weapon or something, and it ends up, leading to the ruination of everything. But then like little things like the Hymn of the Faith was actually a song that was made to mock Bavel. I think it was a song that was popular in Xanarkand and was used to mock Bavel. And so since all the faith are people from Xanarkand, they sing the song, and then Bavel co-opted it and changed its meaning and made it the like epitome of this new religion. And Yu Yevon is turned, like, they knew who Yu Yevon was, and they created this whole religion around him. It's crazy. I didn't do that the first time
dumb.
Through. It's kind of dumb.
It's also dumb that they hide all this backstory that would have made the story kind of work a little bit better with this bozo.
This bozo who you might not see.
Might not see. So let me get this straight. Maybe my questions don't have answers. I'm willing to accept that my questions don't have answers. So Bavel was about to win this war against Xanarkin, and Xanarkin their army was a bunch of summoners.
Yep.
So the summoner world, the summoner city summoned Sin.
Yep. Yu Yevon summoned Sin.
Okay. Yu Yevon was a summoner from Xanarkand.
He was a real good summoner. He was the best summoner in Xanarkand.
Okay. So he summoned Sin. And then Sin started destroying everything.
Yes. And Yu Yevon summons for the sake of summoning, so it just keeps summoning things.
So Yu Yevon gets corrupted and turns into a bug.
Yes.
Okay. So all of the other remaining summoners just decide to, hey, let's just become monster people that get preserved in temples.
Basically, they just preserve their power to make the Aeons, yeah.
And so after they turn into monster people, they start sleeping, and then they start dreaming.
Yep.
And so the
turn
world...
into living statues.
Okay. So the world that Titus was living in was a dream world.
Yes, it is a summon. As much a summon as any of the summons are summoned.
It's a summon? So Titus doesn't come from an alternate... Titus comes from a dimension that doesn't exist.
Well, it exists. I think it is just in Sin. It is part of Sin. So you know how you go inside of Sin and there's a bunch of, like, stuff in there? Like, there's a temple and a town and, like, all that weird existential stuff. And then when you fight Jekt, it's like that floating J symbol in the sky that you saw in Xanarkand.
So, is Jekt real? Is Jekt a real person, or is Jekt also from the dream world?
Jekt is also from the dream world.
So how does Jekt go from the dream world to Spira real world?
I think the previous Sin. I think he came out of the previous Sin.
So people can come from out of Sin's asshole? So did Sin just basically shit out Titus and Jekt?
I think so. Because if you look at the back of Sin, it's like got a bunch of temples and big structures on it.
Oh God! This
so I think
is so fucking dumb.
I think Xanarkand is in there. The Xanarkand that.
So
Titus
Xanarkand. So are there like other cities inside Sin?
I don't think so. I think that place that Titus is from is inside of, or at least somewhere. It is summoning. It exists.
So
it
there's
is somewhere.
a city. There's a city.
So that never sleeps.
So the city inside Sin just is perpetually living Titus's blitzball match where he gets his shit destroyed by Sin.
And this is where it gets hard to explain. I don't know. I don't know if it's perpetually. I don't know if it was like in a state of stasis. Like it's just constantly the same day. I have no idea. But there seems to be a progression of time, so I guess maybe it's just constantly looping in there. I don't know.
This is reminding me of the Star Trek: The Next Generation episode, The Inner Light. Did you ever watch Star Trek?
No.
No. It's actually probably one of the best episodes of Star Trek ever, is The Inner Light. But basically, Picard is stuck in a dream world where it's a bunch of people, and he's, after living inside the dream world for what is in the dream world 2-3 years, he's convinced that he's someone in that dream world. And then at the very end, when he's an old man and about to die, all of the dream people come together, and it's like, this is not real. You are a person that we shared our memories to because we died thousands of years ago, and we wanted you to be aware of our memories so as that our history and our people could be known forever. So Final Fantasy X is like a shitty episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation.
Sure. Sounds plausible.
So
you go inside of... So you fight Sin.
You buy the fins, and man,
you blow them off.
I think the fin battles go on for way too long.
I mean, for me, they lasted for 3 turns.
Okay,
so
fine, whatever. But the battles with the fins go on for way too long, but they are cinematic. They're dynamic. I like pulling in and out. They're really great. And it's a battle on a scale that we have never seen before. All of these battles have been grounded on the ground, or, you're fighting a small demon. No, this is the big... You are doing a big battle. This is a big deal. And we know it's a big deal because you are in the air fighting this giant monster. I think the design for Sin is super dumb. I think the design for Sin is not great. It's a weird-looking
whale
bug
flying
alien, and then it has the eyeballs of a spider. But man... is it used in kind of like Jack's abuse of alcohol is a monster, that it's a burden.
It's a Papo EO situation.
Papo EO. Yeah. But no, yeah, it's a cinematic battle, but some of these battles go on for way too long, and meh. Like at some point you're fighting like Sin's clitoris, like the Genesis. And it's like, what? Can we just cut the chase?
You knock both of its wings off, and then you fight a Sin spawn, and then the Sin core, and then he overdrives, and then you defeat that, and then he crash lands, and you go inside this giant ball of fireflies that was Sin.
Fighting the overdrive Sin, the head that's slowly but surely lumbering towards you, is a very cinematic experience, and it's a great battle. I just wish that it wasn't one of those contrived time battles where you have 16 turns to do X amount of damage, otherwise you lose.
Yeah, and you can talk him down, which is kind of cool. When Titus talks to him, he loses. I think he loses overdrive. I think.
Is it this battle or is it the other battle?
I know you can do. I thought it's in both, but I don't know.
Okay, I didn't know.
Maybe it's just in the other battle, but
but
then you go inside of Sin. The first thing you do, I think, is fight Seymour again.
No, you have to go through the Sea of Sorrow.
Oh yeah.
And if you don't have no encounter, you're going to fight these horrible monsters called Behemoth Kings. But I did, and so I didn't have to worry about any of that shit.
That sounds awesome. But then you fight Seymour after the Sea of Sorrow, and Seymour sucks again.
Why does Seymour become the most Final Fantasy villain ever?
I don't know.
This is the dumbest boss design. Like, who put in those weird circle spheres that allows him to cast certain spells?
Yeah,
where did that shit come from?
This is where Final Fantasy got... It just never translated from the big stupid sprites of the 5-6 era. And when they had to translate that into 3D, you got a bunch of bosses that just make no sense. And
he turns
Seymour
into
Flux
this glass transparent jellyfish monster, and there's weird circular clocks behind him which determine which spells he casts.
And what
the
he's
thing
weak
that drove
against.
me absolutely bonkers is how some of them turn clockwise, others turn counterclockwise. You don't know which one does which. And so I was thinking, oh man, I'm going to make him super weak. It's going to go down. He's going to cast one super weak. Oh, no, wait. Now that combines with the other one. Now he's going to cast 2 of those. Oh, fuck.
You know what the trick is?
Just use your stupid bullshit fire jam mix.
You combine 2 doors to tomorrow, and then you... Well, no, actually, it's a little tricky on this one, because I believe he starts with an immunity to fire, so you need to throw a different gem. You need to throw a thunder gem, and then he dies.
I tried to beat him legitimately, so this took me a couple tries. And you know me, Gino.
Did you forget what the elements were this time?
I did forget the elements. I was afraid to ask you because I knew you would yell at me if I asked you on Steam. It's like, what were the elements?
That's fair, because this is the third to last boss in the game.
Do you know how I finally remembered it? Is I asked for help on my blogs, and someone said, just think of this. If you throw an ice cube in a bath, would it kill you? It's like, no. If you threw a toaster in a bath, would it kill you? Yeah? There you go.
There you go.
There you go. Yeah, the boss battle against Seymour sucks.
You kill him.
You kill him.
Seymour Flux, more like Seymour sucks.
Oh, yeah. It's just it's one of the few fights against Seymour where you can use your Aeons. So if you cast or use Anima, there's a neat little line of dialogue.
Oh, what does he say?
He basically says, now you are going to try and fight me too, traitor? I'll kill all of you. It's like he kind of gets a little emotional. It's like, even you? It's just quick. It's just interesting that they did their homework. They did their homework.
That makes sense. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And then after that, you go through
there's
like
literally no conclusion to Seymour's story arc.
No, he's just dead.
He's just dead. Basically, Seymour makes no qualms about what he did. He doesn't try to contextualize his actions. He's just literally the worst villain in Final Fantasy history. Like, if you're just going to have the cackling evil villain, go the Sephiroth route and make him the only villain of the story. The reason why Sephiroth is so iconic is because he does horrible shit. He is the center, he's the crux of the story, and he is what the game ends with. If you're going to have all these secondary or third, like, antagonists, you got to do more than this. You got to contextualize the villain. Like Kuja, they contextualize his actions, kind of in a shitty way, but at least he does cool shit. At least he does really cool stuff. Seymour's just a dude.
And he sucks.
And he sucks.
And he dies.
And he dies.
And so you go through this like cloud village thing, this weird geometry, and then
it's visually quite interesting. It's just kind of a pain to navigate through. At this point, I feel like the game is starting to...
It gets real Final Fantasy at the end.
It gets real Final Fantasy. It starts to overstay its welcome.
Yes.
It's like, I know I'm going to fight Jack. Just fucking stop the puzzle bullshit.
There's like one or two spots before you fight Jekt when they should have just had you fight Jekt. Like
literally, the part where I really got angry at the game is when you enter the nucleus and you have to collect like the 10 yellow spheres on the ground.
I loved, because in that moment, they even added like a new UI thing to keep track of how many crystals you've collected, and it was just so clearly they're just trying to give you good items so that you can fight Jekt at closer to full strength, and it's just such a weird thing to do at the very end of the game.
So they want to, like...
It's such a kludge.
This is something that, oddly enough, that Final Fantasy VII does a good job. Literally, there's like 8 or 10 Magicka or magic items on the ground, and you just pick them up. You literally just pick them up. Final Fantasy VIII does a great job in that you can break the game in a matter of minutes. And Final Fantasy IX, the last boss, no, the actual last boss is pretty much of a ball buster, but just the solution to the problem of you might not be ready in Final Fantasy X is super shitty.
Yep. But then you fight Jekt, and Jekt is... You have that moment before you fight Jekt where Titus finally... he gets to have his piece. He tells Jecht, "I hate you," and Jecht's like, "I know."
That's, again, if the story was just about Yuna and her pilgrimage confronting their Yevon Jesus, and Yevon Jesus is real shitty and their religion is bullshit, and then the secondary story is Titus coming to terms with the fact that his father was an asshole and might have reformed, and he needs to come to terms with that, and his father needs to come to terms with the fact that he was abusive, fine. That would have been a great story. That would have been a fantastic story. But these quaint and touching elements are just wasted. Because hours are spent on mindless, needless bullshit. That didn't need to be there. Didn't have to have all this extra nonsense about
dreams
or faith or alternate dimensions. Just have sin be a metaphor. Like a real lazy metaphor.
I mean, he is
lazy metaphor.
He's a whale named Sin.
He's called Sin. Like, super lazy metaphor. Fine. It's your game. I'll let you do that.
Titus, it's time for you to defeat Sin. It's time for you to defeat Sin and your father metaphor.
It's just... This is ostensibly what the story is about, is Titus confronting his father.
And it's a great scene.
It's a great scene, but we went in the asshole of a whale so as that Titus could beat the shit out of his dad.
Yep. And then when you
the
fight
dad
his dad,
takes us to an alternate dimension.
You fight on a sword.
Yeah, he pulls that sword out of his chest. That's a cool visual.
And he says, like, look, son, when this starts, I won't be able to, stop. And they have a really terse conversation. I actually love how few words they exchange. Because it's not okay. They are not now close because Titus has done all of these things. It's not what he went through as a child is not undone by what he's learned about Jecht and his growth. He just says, I hate you, and then he kills him. And he's sad about it.
And Jecht doesn't try to gain his favor back. Jecht realizes, I was a bad person. I was a bad person to you, to these people in this version of Spira. They loved me, but I will never have your love back, and I'm not asking you to forgive me. And that is great storytelling. Now, Gino, this is where... the one thing that I think is super... It's like the greatest example of ludonarrative dissonance in Final Fantasy X, besides its stupid, inane bullshit or stupid... Like when Final Fantasy X... It's the same criticism I had of Final Fantasy IX, oddly enough, is when Final Fantasy X feels beholden to be a Final Fantasy game, it's terrible. It's a trash fire. But when Final Fantasy X is beholden to no one and tries to convey its original narrative, fantastic. Now, here's where I became very aware that I had not been playing the game competently. I've been slopping through. So, Gino, I want you to guess. I have a picture of this. Yuna, Titus, and Auron. Guess their HP and MP. Or actually, just guess their HP for Auron. Around this time.
2,000.
2,979.
Okay.
That's pretty low, right?
That's pretty low.
Yuna, 1,675. Titus, 2,420.
So mine was lower, but I also used some cheaty.
You used your normal cheaty bullshit ass exploits. I was trying to beat Jecht legitimately.
That was a mistake.
It was a mistake.
There's no honor in Final Fantasy.
There's no honor in Final Fantasy. So I did two things. In hindsight, if I ever could play this game again, I would be able to fix this problem. One, I never filled in my empty spheres in my sphere grid.
That was a mistake. Those spheres give you more stats than normal.
I realized that the HP sphere gives me 300 instead of 200 or 100. So I never
The strength sphere gives you 4.
I never used any of those spheres. I didn't even use them on the critical characters that you told me to use those on, like Titus, Riku, and Kimahri. I never used the friend spheres, the teleport spheres. I never taught my characters use or copycat.
Did you teach them in Trust?
I taught Oron in Trust because it was on his path, but I never taught anyone else.
Okay, so let me explain what you needed to do, because this is how you break the game, and I told you to do this. So
no, you actually never told me to do in Trust. So
okay.
I went back to the podcast, and I did Copycat. I taught everyone Copycat, and I taught everyone Use.
In Trust allows you to give your overdrive meter to someone else, and it just adds your overdrive meter to whoever they are, which means if you have two characters that are 50% of the way there, you can just entrust it, have them both entrust to Riku, and then Riku will be at full overdrive, which means you basically have 3 bars that only count towards mix, because that's the only one you ever want. So that is what I did. I used mix, I got everyone straight 9s, and then I threw 1 grenade, which killed the 2 pagodas that are next to Jekt in 1 hit, and then I used like 2 gems.
I also didn't use any of the teleportation spheres.
That's
so I didn't use friend spheres, teleport spheres, or return spheres.
Those are all really good.
Those are all really good. They're really good. I learned this the hard way. So I was playing catch up to where I had to use the teleport spheres because I had already maxed out my levels. So I could only do like the leveling in the closest vicinity. So I would transport Kimahri because Kimahri had like 1,600 HP. So I would transport Kimahri where he was next to 2 HPs or an empty grid, and I would use a health spear. So I had to spend about 30 minutes trying to fix my my mess up. I finally learned how to do the the customization system, and I realized, this customization item refinement system that I slung a lot of shit against actually is kind of good. Like to a degree, it does what it needs to do. And I want to play this game again so that I can play it right. I'm going to do it. I can do this. Gino, I can be a champion. I can be a champion of Final Fantasy X. I could be the greatest there ever was.
You eventually learned how to play.
No one ever was.
So you did it. You did eventually
we beat Jekt. I used your exploit of use mixed trio of 9999. I didn't realize that if a character dies, they lose the ability to use that.
Yeah. Don't have them die.
Don't die. This is where the game should end. You beat Jekt, Sin dies.
And then you fight Jekt Overdrive, and that one's scary too.
But you can
talk him off the ledge.
Him off the ledge. It's really weird to see Titus's voice seems to affect Jekt. That's what I meant when I said there's this disconnect with the Ludo narrative. It's like when the little prompt pops up, Jekt appears torn. It's like, that's dumb. That's so dumb.
When you defeat him, like Titus says, "I hate you again," and Jekt's like, "Save it for later." They only say like a few sentences to each other before the fight and after the fight, and then
it's actually well done. Like you understand, like there's heat. There's this is not a relationship that's completely paired up. Although the way that Titus greets Jekt at the very end of the game, I want to talk about this once we get there. I don't like that at all. I like this part of their relationship where they understand we've squared away certain items of our feud, we've squared away certain parts of our relationship, but we'll never be completely perfect or there.
Yeah, and I like that.
How restrained the response is, yeah.
His last words, I think, to his dad are, for the first time, I'm glad to have you as my father. And that's the last thing he says, basically, to Jekt. And Jekt's response is laughing. And so I think that's a well done. Then you fight Yevon, and
the story should have ended at Jekt. This little fucking sideshow nonsense with Yevon might be my least favorite part of the ending.
Now, I enjoyed having to summon each of your
Yeah,
Aeons and having to defeat them.
Aeon fight is fine. And
I like that, I don't know if you caught this, but the game casts auto life on all of your characters.
Yes, I did, because I had a character die and it's like, oh shit. And then auto life gets cast. But what do you know what this means? It means that the fights that you are in heaven last way longer than they have any right to be. And the last fight with you, Yevon, is just...
It heals itself, which sucks. And there's no tension because you can't die?
Can't die. There's no tension. It's the dumbest design. It's a little bug thing. They couldn't even bother to like use something as awesome as Omega Weapon.
It looks like a tick.
And it's just a dumb thing. It's a bad boss battle because, oddly enough, the person who does the most damage to you, Yevon, is you, Yevon, when he casts gravity spells that he can't fucking block against himself. So he ended up doing more damage to himself than I was able to do to him.
Yeah, I just basically attritioned this fight out. Which
and
was weird.
if that's the best way to do it. The problem is it just lasts way too long. It's
anticlimax.
It's anticlimactic. It's not visually interesting. And you know what? You, Yevon, doesn't say anything to you. It's just
he's just a bug.
Here's this little bug monster. The game doesn't even take the time to have you, Yevon, explain what his purpose is, like what his objective is, what his perspective is.
Well, they say you, Yevon, is not like a person anymore. It is just a
monster,
thing that summons.
But even then, that's fine. It's a monster. Then get your last little story piece. Otherwise, this doesn't need to happen. The story should end with Jecht. Sin is dead. We're good. Or have the battle with you, Yevon, mean something or have tension. And I cannot believe, I know where you're going to go because I'm going to basically say the same thing. At least in Final Fantasy IX, at least the final battle with Necron is a big deal. It's an ass pull. They pull it out of their ass. But at least it's a real battle with tension and means something to the story. I don't like it. I know you had your piece about what the true meaning of Necron is. Personally, I still don't agree with your opinion about Necron. But at least Necron was a real fight. The battle with you, Yevon, is not a fight. It's an attrition. It's a waiting game. There's nothing there that you basically understand. You get what you need out of you, Yevon's fight in 30 seconds. And there's nothing else to be gained. It just keeps going.
Yeah. It's not a great fight, but at least after the fight is over, you get the scene where Yuna sends all the Aeons, and it's a CGI cutscene, FMV, and as she's sending them, they burst into these clouds of pyreflies, and you kind of see these giant monsters that you've been summoning the whole game for the last time, and it's kind of somber. And at a certain point, you realize that as she's sending them, Ornn is starting to get sent as well. And he basically says, no, don't stop. Just keep going. I'm done. You know, it's your world now. It's your story now.
Ornn's little moment here is also another example of short amount of dialogue, but it's effective. He goes. I like the thing that he does to Kimahri. He goes up and he kind of taps him in the chest.
Yeah. It's been long enough. It's your world now. This is your world now. And then he disappears. It's freaking bad as shit. He like says bye to everyone, and then
it's kind of a visual kaleidoscope where you see your old summons kind of float in the air and get dispelled. It's a weird it's a weird visual, but it's goddamn, is it effective? It's somber.
You're just floating in space, and then you're on the top of the airship, and Yuna's sending everything, and Titus starts dissolving in the air. And Yuna starts losing it, and Titus says, "I have to go. I'm sorry I couldn't show you Xanarkand." And actually, right before the final boss fight, Titus basically says, "When we're done with this, I'm going to disappear, and you have to do it anyway." But the part where Yuna tries to stop him, and she falls through him. Is amazing.
It's so good. It's such a good scene.
And she says, I love you, and then he tries to hug her, but he can't. And so you see that he's hugging her, but he clips through. It's so well done.
It's emotionally evocative. It's amazing how this story gets what it needs out of this relationship arc in the last hours after fumbling and falling flat on its face for 90% of the game. Let us not forget about the Macalania J-pop scene.
Yeah, they swam or floated or whatever. But this scene...
Goddamn, this scene is... It's by far one of the few times, other than Final Fantasy IX, where the conclusion manages to take all this bullshit, all this baggage, all this dream world baggage, ties a neat bow on it, and you kind of forget the fact that it's a bunch of shit in the box.
Yep. And after he hugs her, he runs, he jumps off the front of the airship, and he basically falls into
the dream world,
the far plane, and sees his dad and Orin and Braska, and it's awesome.
No.
And that's kind of cool.
No.
It's kind of cool.
No, he high-fives his dad.
He gives his dad a high five.
It's
not as good as the hug.
That's the part that I was like, are you fucking kidding me?
Yeah, that's too far.
We just had a scene where you two came to terms with the fact that you forgive each other, you understand each other, but you're a bridge too far.
Yeah. You know what they should have done? They should have just had, during the hug, him fade away behind her. And then she turns around and he's gone. That should have been how you actually end it.
I would have taken a fist bump with his dad instead of a high five.
You know what? He doesn't need to. They don't need to give him like it's okay. He's in a better place now. They should have just been like, he's gone. And then cut to like Yuna.
Or just walk away from Yuna, and then Yuna like reaches out into the distance, and then he fades away or turns into a bunch of fireflies as she reaches into him.
Yeah,
like I realize that's an old playbook play, but that would have worked.
It still works. I did enjoy the summons, like all the faith turning to stone.
The faith turning to stone. And
the water, like, turning into these bubbles with all these people in them. And then you see Titus in there.
Yeah.
I think the ending of this game, for how much bullshit setup they do, is very potent. And then Yuna just kind of, like, giving a speech at the stadium in Luca.
Her speech is terrible, but it works.
Yes, because she's not a public speaker.
Not a great speaker. But the game gets what it needs out of Yuna. She does her regular spiel about the preciousness of life, how everyone has lost their homes, dreams, and friends. She basically says the most Yuna speech you could expect out of her.
Yep.
And, it's kind of like, I want to hate it. I want to hate that scene. I should hate that scene, but it does exactly what it needed to do, and the story ends exactly on the note that it should have ended on.
And then Steki Dane plays, and it's cool. And so
there's that stupid late title card scene that shouldn't be there.
Yep, that shouldn't be there, but thanks 10-2.
Thanks 10-2.
And then
I gotta get the list out.
Let's go ahead and
let's do this shit.
Let's figure out.
So, as our wonderful readers should know, we have a list. We're ranking all of the Final Fantasies as they stand. So as it stands, at the top, Final Fantasy IX. Below it, the second best Final Fantasy, Final Fantasy VII. Right below that,
Final Fantasy VIII.
Correct.
Then Mobius Final Fantasy in dead last forever.
You never know that. You never know that. Mobius Final Fantasy is the worst Final Fantasy. So let's do what we normally do. Let's get through the fast and easy. Final Fantasy X versus Mobius Final Fantasy.
Final Fantasy X is a better game than Mobius Final Fantasy.
Final Fantasy VIII versus Final Fantasy X.
Final Fantasy X is a better game than Final Fantasy VIII. I am fine with saying that. even though the dream sequences, it was all a dream.
Might
Final Fantasy
be as
VIII
bad as your GFs ruin your memories or the orphanage scene.
I will say Final Fantasy VIII might, despite everything not in fact being a dream, has a better dream sequence.
Sure.
But yes, 10 is better than 8. I'm fine with saying that.
Final Fantasy VII versus Final Fantasy X. I think we could have a long-winded conversation about this. I am going to formally say that I believe Final Fantasy X is better than 7.
I am going to agree, and I don't think we have to go over a long-winded thing. I think that the gameplay in 10 is more compelling. I
Correct.
think that the leveling system is more dynamic once you actually know what you're doing, and I think the story is just better. At the end of the day, these games are about story.
The only thing I'll say about 7 is that for as cool as its end is and as strong as its introduction, I think to this day, Final Fantasy VII has my favorite introduction in a Final Fantasy game. Like,
yes,
actually,
it's
the
really strong.
reactor scene and your first introductions to that entire world, the city, that's still great. But
the end of 10
everything
is...
everything in between in 7, from beginning to end, is kind of a product of its time. A bunch of people trying to make their best first impression with the PlayStation 1. So, and also people forget that there's just a lot of bullshit in Final Fantasy VII. Like, people who say that that's their favorite game, I'm not going to take that away from you, but I want you to go back and play that game.
Gongaga.
And play some of the bullshit scenes in that game. Like, did you forget that you have to use a dolphin to fling Cloud up into the sky? Did you forget?
You have to shoot a submarine?
All right. So, here's the real question. Is Final Fantasy X better than Final Fantasy IX? Is it the best Final Fantasy game?
No.
I am going to argue it might be better than 9.
I'm going to strongly say no.
I'm going to say this. I think Final Fantasy X is funner to play. I think the Sphere Grid is one of the most creative. After being down on it for quite some time, the Sphere Grid is one of the most creative and novel leveling systems I've seen thus far in the Final Fantasy series and franchise. And it provides plenty of options. It allows for user creativity. It's interesting. It's tough to navigate, and the UI is garbage. But at the end of the day, the gem system in Final Fantasy IX and the ability system in Final Fantasy IX is rather stringent and strict.
But I would say that it gives you a lot of play within the Final Fantasy archetypal roles.
Okay, sure.
It has a more defined sense of cast, whereas 10, it starts out with very rigidly defined roles, and then by the time you pull out, basically everyone can do everything. 9 has its lanes, and characters can kind of be customized within those lanes, but ultimately they are in their lanes. Now, I think that the ability to swap characters in and out in 10 actually makes the party more compelling and the gameplay more compelling.
I wish future games in the Final Fantasy series would allow me to just swap those characters in and out.
Yeah, but I think I can get behind 10 having a better combat system, even though I really enjoy 9's combat system. That's fine with me.
I enjoy Final Fantasy IX's combat system more than 10 in the last 2 to 3 hours. But hour 1 to 15 of 9 in terms of mechanics and the speed of battles and filling in the ATB meter,
it's slow.
Painful. And Gino, this is going to be an issue. I'm just going to put this out here. I really dislike the ATB system. I think it's one of the worst things ever.
Good thing that it's never coming back. Oh, wait, Final Fantasy X too.
What?
Gotcha, sucker.
What, really? They got rid of the combat system in Final Fantasy X?
It's all different.
Why?
You'll find out.
Okay, so listeners, he's making like this very sinister smile you would see in an anime, like a cat face.
Yeah. Your good old pal ATB's gonna come back.
Why?
And it's gonna be even crazier. It's gonna feel like a mod. It's gonna feel like a mod.
I did see your tweet where you said,
Yeah.
man, Final Fantasy X too is kind of like a ROM hack mod that a crazy person made.
Yeah. You just wait.
I hear people say that even though the story to 10-2 is a nightmare, it's mechanically quite interesting.
It is interesting, but it's real janky. And so the ATB
now,
meter, you might have to warm up to it again, but we'll see. I'm fine with saying the combat in 10 is as good or better than 9. They're both... 9's better.
Story-wise, Final Fantasy X has some very significant highs, but probably what holds it back is that the lowest of its lows far exceed that of Final Fantasy IX, and I think you would probably agree with that sentiment.
Yeah, ultimately, I think that 9, like its lowest moments, it's got some story minutia that is completely terrible.
I will never articulate support for the introduction of Terra, the whole multi-dimensional stuff, especially Zidon's reveal that he is a clone or some part of Genome Project and basically the harbinger of death or the apocalypse, whichever of those two the game wanted me to believe.
I'm fine with the larger metaphorical thing, just like in Final Fantasy X. Luckily, we're not comparing a game with a iron-tight story to a game with a flawed story. We're comparing a game where the late game twist is the main character's from another world and is trying to stop the souls from one world from going into the other, and that's the main antagonist's goal, against a game where the main protagonist is a dream and the main antagonist is a flying whale that seems to be made up of the dreams of a long dead city. So I think we've got just enough bullshit in both, but at no point in Final Fantasy IX does the reveal undermine the story quite as much as 10's does, I think.
I agree with you. I was disappointed with the twist in Terra with Final Fantasy IX because there is no foreshadowing. I know you contemplated how there is some foreshadowing that there's this connection with Garland, but it's a disappointing twist.
Yeah.
But at no point does it completely undermine the characterization or entire parts of it. It doesn't lead to like gaping plot holes within its narrative.
Yeah, and I would say the moment of doubt with Zidane, the not alone sequence, is one of the best sequences, and it comes from his moment of doubt in Terra. I think that the "it was all a dream" moment leads to all of the worst moments in Final Fantasy X, and also adds to a bunch of gaping plot holes.
But the ending of Final Fantasy X,
it's really good.
I would argue salvages that bullshittery, as you would call it, bullshittery.
Sure. But we outlined a dozen different ways that Final Fantasy X could have had that same thing without invoking that. And I guess in 9 you could have also had Zidane have a moment of doubt without going to another world. You could totally have invoked
parallel
that same
universes
scene.
or clones, like soul transfer.
Yeah. You totally
It was
could have
all a
done that.
dream. It's just the most played out thing they could have done, and they did it. They did it.
But even if you don't go to like it was all a dream versus the other world, the flashbacks with Zidane, where hey, remember that flashback where Jecht like appears and then snatches Yuna and Riku away and
cry, that's all you're good for.
Remember that? Remember that scene?
Then I had this mounting fear the game would devolve into an Oedipus complex because that scene is so weird. That game is weird.
Remember all those flashbacks where these creepy kid who's Bahamut's faith would just show up for no reason? Remember? Yeah. Do
you think... I think the relationship between Yuna and Titus is better than the relationship between Garnet and Zidane. It's more fully realized.
I'd agree with that. I think that
if there wasn't this garbagey J-pop scene that's a bunch of craziness,
yeah,
I would feel better about saying this, but no, I think it's more fully realized. It's one of the least obtuse relationships, the least offensive or meddlesome relationship arc in a Final Fantasy game
I
so
would
far.
say that the Final Fantasy X romance is the more romantic in an idyllic sense.
Mm-hmm.
But
It's
Final
a
Fantasy
romantic
IX,
romance.
it is. I would say it's more, in that idealized rom-com sort of way, where these two characters, they're star-crossed lovers, and it's all going to work out in the end, come hell or high water. They fall in love because they must. I would say in 9, there's a little bit more nuance to the relationship, where Garnet is balancing being a princess, being a queen, being a ruler, with being with the person she loves. They have moments apart and have moments where they grow. In 10, it's a lot more, these are the railroad tracks, and these characters, they are just hurtling rapidly towards their eventual relationship. In 9, there's that whole scene where Zidane is like sulking because Garnet has moved on, she's a queen, and they can't be together anymore because he's a frickin' thief and she's the queen of a nation. Or like the moment where she's mute.
We can at least agree that both games have a better relationship with story arc than Final Fantasy VIII.
Well, yeah. Yeah. Though there's nothing in any video game that is quite as amazing as the space Fei Wong song.
Don't lie to our audience. Stop lying to our audience. We have people who trust our assessment of these games.
Look, if you want to see one of the most
Our
incredible
integrity.
things, like hundreds of people got together and said, you know what we're going to do? We're going to make a space. We're going to have these people like make out in space while J-pop plays.
You're lying to our audience.
You should see that.
How dare
Everyone
you?
should see it.
You're a journalist. You have integrity.
That's true. I have a responsibility. But you
have a
should play Final
responsibility.
Fantasy VIII. But
You should
just
play
know.
Final Fantasy.
Just know
So-
it's in a Rocky Horror Picture Show sort of way.
I think it's time for me to concede. Maybe personally, I enjoyed Final Fantasy X more than Final Fantasy IX, but when I look at the evidence, when I set aside emotion, if I'm looking at this scientifically, using the science
We use every time.
Final Fantasy IX, still the greatest Final Fantasy game ever created.
He said it, not me, but I agree.
Final
This is
Fantasy X is
second best.
the second greatest Final Fantasy game ever made. And I know this means Final Fantasy VII is the third greatest, and we are probably going to get a lot of people who say we are crazy for ranking 10 above 7.
Those people are wrong, so it's fine.
Those people are wrong. Although, I would just want to put it out there. I think Final Fantasy VII has the strongest introduction of a Final Fantasy game to date thus far. Reactor scene, introduction to Midgar, the camera zooming in and out. Probably one of the best introductions in video game, period. Strong,
You don't
tightly
think
packed,
You don't think the
well
Blitzball
edited.
game, when it's all dun
We didn't-
dun,
Looking back at it, we didn't talk about how
that song comes back. in
that
the
song
Czech
comes
fight.
back, and Final Fantasy X, I guess this officially dings it down to second place. Probably the worst Final Fantasy final boss theme thus far.
Yeah, it's just noise.
Oh god, it's so bad.
Yeah, when compared with the sweet organ music in 9 and
Or Ultimicia's
Ultimisia, that slow.
Kuja's theme,
music.
which is like "We Will Rock You."
Yeah, it's so good. Sephiroth's theme, the
Sephiroth's
song
theme
that
is iconic. It's One Winged Angel is iconic for a reason. It's
the song that
best-
launched a dozen concert series.
It's the song that put them on the map for all these concerts, video game music, like Video Games Live, whatever it is. That song is popular for a reason.
Yeah.
Although Final Fantasy VII may be slightly overrated in its OST other than that one track.
Yep. And then Final Fantasy VIII is the fourth best Final Fantasy game, and in Dead Last Forever, Mobius Final Fantasy.
Mobius Final Fantasy.
I don't know. Maybe we'll play the After Years, and it'll turn out that it's better than the After Years. Who's to say? So, with that, our
We
next
have to
journey.
formally announce some bullshit. I wish
next
people
Final
could
Fantasy
see
game.
the wicked smile on your face right now.
Yeah.
The eyebrow raising that you're giving me right now.
I just played some more Final Fantasy X-2, and that's what we're playing. And, ooh boy, what a thing that is. And we're going to be playing it together. And this is going to be great.
They got rid of the combat system from 10 for 10-2?
Yeah, they did.
Why? It's
I
the
don't
best part
know.
of 10.
I mean, I would say the combat system's the best part of 10-2, but it for a very different reason. We will discuss it. Actually, I'll save it for the Final Fantasy X-2 podcast because I have some ideas. I can see where this game, where 10-2 fits in. It makes total sense now why it is the game that is before. It is a game that I feel shows that 13 was coming in terms of its combat.
It's the game that basically had to be made to bail out Square from bankruptcy.
Yep.
And I guess that shows. Painfully so.
You should see the opening cutscene. It's so good.
So I talked to other users and say, I remember going public on the first podcast and first blog post saying that I was introduced to the Final Fantasy franchise by watching a cutscene. I thought that was the introductory cutscene. I've since been informed that is not the introductory cutscene. That is later or in the midpoint of the game. So I have never seen the introduction to Final Fantasy X-2.
Ooh, this will be fun.
I am contemplating setting a date, my dear listeners, on which I will blind play the first hour of that game and stream it on Twitch. Keep updated.
We should do that.
Yeah, I should probably watch. Is it really that bad?
Oh, it's
something?
Yes. Well, define bad.
Is Final Fantasy 2
10-2.
the definition of a game so bad it's good?
No, that's Final Fantasy 8.
Okay. So why do you have this ironic love of Final Fantasy X-2?
Same reason. I think 8 is more. I think 8 they play around in a similar space, except 8 is a lot more self-serious. 8 doesn't realize that it's ridiculous.
Oh yeah.
10-2 does. 10-2 the whole time knows.
And you would say basically 10 is the last Final Fantasy in the main series you truly non-ironically loved.
Yes. I dislike 12. I hate 13. I never played another game in the mainline series ever since. 15 I haven't played because that story looks like garbage, and I play these games largely for story. I haven't played 14 because I don't play MMOs. I didn't play 13.2 or 13.3 because I hated 13. And
11 is another MMO.
I played 11, but I don't like MMOs. So I played it enough to go, I have to group with people, and then I quit.
Yeah, well, the future of this podcast is all the big targets have been hit. Yes. Well, I guess you could say 13, and the 13 series is a pretty big target that...
6
when
is
we
a
get
big
to
target.
Well, yeah, you're right, 6, and you're
4.
very nostalgic of 5.
Yes, we should play 5 at some point. I mean, once we get past 10-2, we can reevaluate and reassess. But we've hit all the PS1 ones. We've hit the good PS2 one. And there are people who like 12. 12 is a victim of Square's marketing department.
A transitional period which would bring forth a new direction that the series has not since recovered from.
No, that's not the problem with 12. The problem with 12 is where they decided that their main character couldn't be the dude who should be the main character.
I've been warned about how the main character is the worst part of 12.
Yes, he is by far the worst part. He is a paint-by-numbers, focus-grouped character who they clearly made the story and the overarching narrative of the game before this character even existed. And then they said, well, shit, we've got all these set pieces made and all these moments made. How are we going to fit this? Apparently the people don't like middle-aged characters, so what do we do?
Shoot.
Well, I guess we need to come up with 2 young characters.
Anything you want to say about me jumping into 10-2? I shouldn't play the Eternal Calm right now. I'm going to just play the introductory cutscene first to 10-2.
Oh, yeah,
And
that's
then
how you should.
if I want to go back, I will play the Eternal Calm and those other weird games that are in the... Anything else that I need to keep in mind if I jump into 12-2?
10-2, you
10-2.
You need to have the volume set appropriately high.
Uh-huh.
I feel if you're going to stream this, you should have the lights off.
Uh-huh.
I don't know. Is there any advice? I mean, there's no preparing yourself for 10-2. It just happens to you.
It just
washes
happens,
over you.
and it's probably going to blow my mind and be this transformal experience.
You're going to be... I guess I should say, 10-2 is probably going to kick your ass. You're probably going to die a lot more than you did in 10. Because 10-2 is a lot faster paced. You're going to want to set the... You're probably going to want to set the combat to wait instead of active. It's active by default.
I fucking hate the ATB system so goddamn much.
Well, the ATB system, if you don't set it to wait in 10-2, enemies just keep acting while you're trying to menu.
I know. I hate that. I hate that. That's part of the reason why I dislike the ATB system is when that's not an option, is when I can't set it to wait.
I mean, there's never been a Final Fantasy game where you can't set it to wait, so it's okay.
Yeah.
At least not that I've found. But you should, yes, you want to set it to wait, otherwise this game's going to kick your ass. It's probably going to kick your ass anyway, but you don't need to help it.
Luckily, it's short.
You should also use a guide, because Final Fantasy X-2 might have the most optional content of any Final Fantasy game, and it's optional from the jump. Like, it will only point out story-critical missions, but there are a bunch of missions that are not story-critical, but are gameplay relevant and stuff like that. Like, there's a bunch of abilities and jobs and stuff, and dress spheres that you...
What's a dress sphere?
Don't worry about it. There's a bunch of things that you might not get access to if you don't have a guide. So you should use a guide.
Aren't there, like, multiple endings for 10-2 too?
Yes. There's also a completion percentage that displays at all times.
Okay, we'll get there when we get there.
Yes.
Because right now, I don't know what I'm getting myself into.
You don't? Thank goodness. All right. Thank you. And next time we come back, remember, listeners, you can get in touch with the show at DeepListensPod on Twitter, deeplistens.libsyn.com. Join the comment sections. You can send me a tweet at thatpinguino, or you can send us an email, deeplistenspodcast@gmail.com. Thank you once again, Chris, Zombiepie, Redacted.
I'm here no matter what.
What can I do for you? Till next time. Peace.
Peace.